So I would like to think that this is an expression of strategic ambiguity from the American president, because it would mean he's actually got a fully well-developed, thought-out strategy. I don't think that's the case. I think this is a very ad hoc war that is being prosecuted right now. I think that he was genuinely taken by surprise that the Iranians would close the Strait of Hormuz, and that we should all be very concerned about the fact that he was surprised, because of course this was going to be a very predictable step that the Iranians would take. So I don't think there's strategic ambiguity here at all. I think, unfortunately, it just shows how decisions are being taken by the Trump administration right now, which isn't relying on a policy process, which is very, very different than any administration that has come to pass, including Trump 1. This is much more centralized and is not relying on the expertise that exists even within the administration itself.
Let me ask you, H.A., about the Strait of Hormuz. Again, we've seen today a European vessel make it through the strait. Would a scenario in which Iran allows freedom of navigation through the strait but imposes transit fees, as it seems to be doing now, would that be considered acceptable, you think, by Washington and also by Gulf states? I'll ask you that in a moment, Abdullah, but first, H.A.
I think it's less about, frankly, Washington and more the Gulf states and the international community writ large. And I don't think it would be regarded as acceptable. Already, the fact that Iran has demonstrated that it can turn the Strait of Hormuz into this choke point is already something that I don't think the Gulf and the international community writ large is going to be willing to accept past the point of this war. On the contrary. So the idea that they would allow this to be formalized and regularized without really stiff opposition, I think is really quite dubious. On the contrary, my expectation is that after this war is over, quite a number of the Gulf states will take steps not to try to bring down the regime or induce state collapse, which I think they're all against, but moving much more towards quarantining in some shape or form the regime in Tehran, because they now realize that no matter what they do with the Iranian regime, if conflict breaks out between it and the Americans or the Israelis, it's going to be them that stands in the crosshairs, even if they've lobbied against such a conflict in the first place.
Abdullah, so will GCC states sit back and allow Iran to control their lifeline?
Of course not. I mean, what Iran is doing, basically, they're trying to weaponize everything. And for them to take over Strait of Hormuz and imposing money for navigation, it actually reminds us of what pirates actually do. This is an act of piracy. This is not an act of good neighboring, because then.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on YouTube today. This is April 3rd. Thank you for joining. I will be replaying these on all my channels, YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all the channels. You can also follow me on Apple Podcast, Podomatic, TikTok, Substack, Buy Me a Coffee. You can watch and listen to my broadcasts on my website under Broadcast Radio or Broadcast Live. Please take a look at that. I greatly appreciate it. If you share the links, ask your social media to follow me. I will also greatly appreciate that. With that said, we're going to be going over some of the news. Some of the big stuff that happened yesterday was 3 generals were dismissed by Pete Hegseth. It's interesting. No one really knows why they were let go at the same time. And there is a theory out there. There is a hypothesis, I should say, that is suggesting that there was a slow walking of changes that Hegseth and Trump wanted in the military, in specifically the Army, that was being slow walked. And therefore, he wanted to purge. Now, it so happens that the 4-star general was also aligned with Biden's pick for the Secretary of Defense, Austin, and that also could be part of the purge here. But it was a chaplain There was an individual that was tied in changing operations for the Army, and then also the 4-star general. So it was probably a coordinated effort. This is not probably a coincidental thing on why they let go all 3 of these generals. Also, Pam Bondi was let go. I felt as though she wasn't doing a good enough job. I think many people felt that way. So a lot of turmoil within the cabinet. Now the question is it Tulsi Gabbard the next one? Is it Kash Patel the next one? Who knows? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the channel by buying the products that I offer. All these videos I do are for free. If you pay attention to the products that I use on a daily basis, you're going to slow down the aging process. All these products are very high quality and they will help to boost up your health. Now, I have structural nanosilver soaps in stock. You can get it in lemongrass and also in peppermint. So get a few bars for your household. What these will do is neutralize, because it has the structural nanosilver, but also help with the health of your skin and your pores of your skin. Use them every day. Very high quality soaps. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Also, what I have in stock are the structural nanosilver lozenges and drops. Make sure you use them during the cold and the allergy season. Spring's here, and people are going to have allergies, and you want to mitigate that sore throat or runny nose or anything like that. You want to create a barrier for your oral pharynx to prevent any further problems. So you can get it in orange splash, vitamin C. You can also get it in Manuka honey. Now for the drops, you can get it in blueberry, cherry flavor, and also in honey and lemon. Very high quality structural nanosilver drops and lozenges. The moment you have that throat irritation, take it right away. Or if you're starting to sneeze a lot, or even if you're just cleaning your house and you're around a lot of dust, take these, and you're creating a barrier for your oral pharynx to prevent further irritation and further problems. It's really important to catch it right away. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nanosilver lozenges and drops, very high quality. And not only does it create a barrier and helps to soothe a sore throat, it also neutralizes. These are better than any other lozenges or drops that you can get, because it has the structural nanosilver. It's really simple. And lastly, the structural nanosilver toothpaste. This has no fluoride. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce irritation at the gum line, help the health of the gum line. And with good oral hygiene, you are improving your cardiovascular health and your valvular health. A lot of people don't realize poor oral hygiene and not neutralizing in your oral cavity can cause cardiovascular and valvular problems. So this toothpaste is the best toothpaste you can get. It's a little bit more expensive than what you would normally pay, but the thing is that this has the structural nanosilver that will help to neutralize. So you get a lot of added benefits to this. And it's really important to take during the winter and the allergy season. So please go to my store and get a few tubes of the toothpaste. Use it every day to help with your oral hygiene. All right. Make sure you use discount 5. I want you to save some money. It's all caps, discount the number 5. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And you will notice that when you're taking these products that I will be mentioning in this video, that you're slowing down the aging process and your organ systems are performing better. All right, let's go to, I want to start with Fox News. They're talking about the rumors that Tulsi Gabbard might be removed. I personally think Tulsi Gabbard should be removed, but that's my thing.
There's now a major shakeup at the Department of Justice.
Bondi is out as AG, with Deputy AG Todd Blanche taking up the role for now as the nation's top prosecutor.
Matt Rivera joins us live from Washington with more. Hi, Maddie. Hi, good morning. Acting AG Blanche is dismissing the notion that the Justice Department is in turmoil
as he fills Bondi's shoes. The president calling Bondi a great American patriot and a loyal friend who did a tremendous job overseeing a massive crackdown in crime across the country, with murders plummeting to their lowest level since 1900. Bondi, for her part, saying she'll continue fighting for the president and his administration in her private sector role. But there are reports the president had a slew of frustrations with Bondi, including that she did not move quickly enough to prosecute the president's perceived political foes. Here's what Blanche had to say when asked by Jesse Waters last night if he's the person to deliver accountability.
Look, I think the president is frustrated.
I'm not really a cupcake, but I am super baked. They stood in the can.
Mood is third-party tested, so you know it's safe.
And it ships legally and discreetly to your door.
Look, I think the president is frustrated. Everybody is frustrated because what we saw happen for the past 4 years is unforgivable and can never happen again. And so certainly I don't mind the frustration. I appreciate the frustration because we do have to make sure that what happened for 4 years never happens again. And we don't talk about investigations, but I can tell you that the Department of Justice is working hard every day. It was working hard yesterday, and we're going to keep on working hard.
Though Bondi is leaving the administration, lawmakers still want to enforce a subpoena to compel her deposition regarding the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. As for the several names being floated to replace her, sources say Blanche, who served as the president's personal attorney in his criminal trials, could be nominated permanently. Environmental Protection Agency Director Lee Zeldin is also reportedly being considered for the role as well. The White House, though, is brushing off reports that the president is floating axing DNI Tulsi Gabbard, saying the president has total confidence in her. Lawrence Carly and Brian.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise yesterday. Thanks so much. And we watch, Peter Doocy gets a call. It's like, Peter Doocy gets a call saying, hey, we're going to be making a change. Here's your big scoop. But so there's going to be a change. So Todd Blanche takes over, right? Will there be a new deputy? Could he do the job? Yeah. Does the president trust him? The question is, confirmation-wise, is he going to be able to get through? I mean, Lee Zeldin is one of those guys, like Tom Homan, in many ways, that's got bipartisan support. Because he's got respect on both sides of the aisle because of his years in Congress and just by his demeanor.
Well, the great thing that Todd has going for him right now is, first, he gets to start the job immediately. And he's already been confirmed by the Senate before. From my understanding, the president is not going to rush this decision. He has a lot of respect for Pam Bondi. He still considers her a personal friend, but the president wants some more intensity when it comes to the Department of Justice. So here's some of the names that are out there floating around. Of course, Brian mentioned Lee Zeldin, Todd Blanche, who's already there at the Department of Justice. Janine Pirro, who used to be here at Fox, obviously, also used to be the judge and a DA here in New York. But she's also gotten the president's eye because she's cleaned up, or at least helped clean up D.C., Carly.
Yeah, and just about everybody on that list we know of and are well-respected legal minds. But interestingly enough, Lee Zeldin is in the lead of this potential pack of contenders. A majority of people say that if it isn't Todd Blanche who's acting right now, it could be Lee Zeldin. And yesterday, he was holding an event with RFK Jr., and the event was focused on getting microplastics out of water bottles. So guess who went from Fox News is Dr. Mark Siegel. He was there to cover the event. This news broke that Pam Bondi is out as AG.
I want to just pivot a little bit before we continue on with this video. In terms of microplastics and nanoplastics, consumption is really wrapping up because a lot of the things that are in our food supply are wrapped in plastics and not only that, our water supply is now starting to be affected. So we have these microplastics that are taking place. So there was a big study that took place in Europe. And what they did was they compared individuals that died, all right, that passed away, and they took tissue samples from their brain, their heart, their kidneys, their liver, right? And they did an analysis and had noticed that microplastics had been increasing over the years. They did a study that I think it was 10 years ago, and then they compared 10 years and recently. I think that data goes all the way to 2025 or 2024. So they were doing a comparison. Maybe it wasn't a full 10 years. I think it was probably 2016. If my memory it serves me right, I think the control was 2016, and then they compared it to data that was from 2024. But either way, they were comparing data. All right, so it's a little less than 10 years. But the thing is that they took these tissue samples and they compared, and they have been seeing that microplastics and nanoplastics, which are even smaller than microplastics, are getting into tissues, the heart, the kidneys, the liver, the brain. And what they have noticed is that there's also a correlation to microplastic accumulation in the brain and early onset of dementia. So this is a big problem. In addition, if you pay attention to the ocean races that happen around every 3 years, where there are teams that are doing the ocean races, they actually do scientific data collection during the race because they're traveling around the whole world, right? They can take samples from the ocean, and then when they go to port, the scientists will collect that, and then they'll do the analysis. And they have noticed over the years that microplastics are increasing in the ocean. So that means that microplastics are getting into the food supply of the ocean. And larger predators will accumulate more and more of this micro and nanoplastic. In addition, many people realize that there is this plastic continent that's starting to emerge within the Pacific. The Pacific is a garbage dump. A lot of people don't know this, but because of the trade winds and the ocean currents, there's an accumulation of garbage and a continent of plastic in the Pacific Ocean. So this will start to degrade, and animals start to get the microplastics into their food supply. And when we fish, when we collect the fish and put it into grocery stores and wrap it in plastic and all this stuff, that we are consuming these microplastics that are in the fish. So microplastics in early onset of dementia, the data out there is seeming to increase and give us an insight that some of the diseases that are happening to the human body, endocrine disruptions, and the endocrine system not working as well, even problems with the heart, because these microplastics are getting into the tissue of the heart and causing signaling issues. So the arrhythmias, the arrhythmias of the heart are starting to manifest because of these microplastics. But I think the big warning sign here is that early onset of dementia because of accumulation of these microplastics and nanoplastics in the brain. And there's no way to get it out. So a lot of people think, well, just detox. You can't get these microplastics out once it's accumulated. So it's a problem. So the best thing you can do is just try to reduce your exposure to these things. More data needs to be accumulated, but I find it interesting that even in sports like ocean racing, data is being collected showing that microplastics are increasing in the food supply, in the water supply, and data has been collected and sampled, tissue samples, showing that humans in the last 10 years have accumulated more microplastics. So we have to really be cognizant of this.
Voted as a potential contender to replace her. Dr. Siegel was there and asked some questions about potential future roles within the administration. Watch this.
You're expected to continue whatever.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
You're expected to continue whatever roles people have.
Never know.
Any comment on that?
I would say that this team every day only grows stronger. And when I was in Congress, people say, "Is this the greatest job you ever had?" And I said, "No, actually serving on active duty in the military was the greatest job I ever had." Until I was in this position, the last 14 months, I would say serving as EPA administrator, being able to work with Secretary Kennedy and the rest of this cabinet, and working under President Trump and Vice President Vance, this team, it is the greatest job I've ever had. And that interaction, that relationship, that engagement, that's not going to end at the end of a time of service in government. It's going to stick with us. It's going to stay with me forever.
So he's a lawyer, military, congressman. Yeah, so he, would he fit? Is he doing well? Yeah, if he wasn't doing well, he would have got that job to try to fix the Pacific Palisades and the lack of progress being made there. But for Lee Zeldin, I think you'd hate to see EPA lose a great leader, put him somewhere else. Although confirmation would be easier, but you have to understand with that job comes a lot of pressure. The president will just say, he's upset by the way he was treated. He wants certain people prosecuted. The strength of the case has everything to do with whether the case should go forward, but the president does not like to hear no. So in that position, you have to be willing to tell the president when nothing's possible and make it happen if there's even a chance it will.
Well, you need also a strong legal mind that has the respect of both parties. And I think what Lee has done from his time in Congress, and we can't forget about the governor race here in New York, did it really good to be a Republican here in the city, and took some of those independent voters and Dem voters away. So, I mean, he's a high potential guy, and he's already been confirmed as well. So that is the plus side for him.
Yeah, and every time President Trump makes a speech, he's always calling out Lee Zeldin as, the guy who gets the permits done the quickest. So he clearly has a lot of respect for him, which could, Brian, mean that he stays at EPA, because then there would be a hole to fill there. But just really quickly, because Pam Bondi served for 14 months, so just to give her due, first of all, I've never seen a more amicable exit of somebody, with the president saying that she's great, we're going to put her in a new role, clearly respects her and cares a lot about her. And the Truth Social post that he posted up on news of her removal was just that, amicable. And one of the things that she did was shift the DOJ back to bread and butter, investigations instead of this lawfare. And she just came on Fox and Friends. The reason that she was in New York is because she was honoring the two hero NYPD officers who stopped the potential terrorists, the two terror suspects, from lobbing that bomb at Gracie Mansion. And she was saying to me, nobody in New York is honoring these people. So I came down from Washington, D.C. to honor these two officers. I mean, that's what law enforcement respects, and that's what real leadership looks like.
Politico says the president's going to make more moves. He said on the docket is Howard Lutnick, the Labor Secretary, DeRemer, as well as possibly Kash Patel. Now, I don't know what Politico knows, but that's the roaring headlines right now on the top of the site.
All I'm saying is that the president has a history of this, that, he puts you in the game, right? He gives you a moment. He's very loyal, especially those that are loyal to him. He gives you a moment to prove yourself. And then if something is not going the right way, then he changes it up.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brighteon Channel.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. This will help with brain function, also boost up your immune system. And vitamin C and magnesium will help with your immune system, help with your skin, and help with brain function. You can take them together. You don't have to worry about the amount of magnesium you're taking. So this is a great stack to help with brain function. Now, magnesium will also help to improve the efficacy of vitamin D3. A lot of people don't know that, so it's really important to take magnesium. A lot of people are magnesium deficient. So it's really important to supplement more for magnesium and increase that brain function. And I have a lot of different neural stacks that you can take to help with brain function. But it's also a holistic approach, proper diet and exercise, learning new things, making sure you filter your water, stay away from processed foods, and try to reduce your exposure to these microplastics and nanoplastics. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. It's all caps, discount, the number 5. The link is in the description to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to play a clip about the generals being canned, all right, last night. And then we're gonna pivot over to an analysis of game theory and what's going on with perhaps Trump's strategy. And this coincides with my theory of a world curse that is going to start on September 11th, 2026. For the ones that have been watching my channel, I've been saying this for a long time. This video that I'll be playing about the game theory is the geopolitical strategy that will emerge because of the curse. All right. So I'll get into a little bit more detail, but first I want to play some news about the actual generals being canned. If I can find it, it should be. Yeah, right here. All right, this was. All right, this one right here. Hegseth tells U.S. Army Chief of Staff to step down.
And we're back. So we have 2 ousters today. This time from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He has asked Army Chief of Staff General Randy George to leave his post. George is the Army's most senior general. A defense official says Hegseth asked General George to retire immediately. Now, the ouster comes as the U.S., of course, is battling Iran. Joining me now is Hal Kempfert, a familiar face around here, and on Live Now, a national security analyst, also a retired U.S. Marine.
Now, Hal, normally is on Live Now, Fox. His analysis of this subject that we're going to be playing is the most comprehensive than I've heard from anyone. All right. This was played last night, but I want to play it for today. His analysis about what's going on is super important. Now, he's ex-Marine. I think Lieutenant Colonel, I think his rank was.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. Let's just get your reaction to this. Is this really a big deal?
Well, it's a deal. I mean, normally when you become a service chief or a chairman of the Joint Chiefs or the vice chair, normally those are 4-year terms. That is not set in stone. That can change, and certainly we've seen a lot of changes. You know, with Pete Hegseth as Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense, he's removed about a dozen flag and general officers. Of course, you may recall he removed C.Q. Brown, Air Force General, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs when he came in. He also, Lisa Franchetti, who was the CNO.
But also pay attention, because the Secretary of War posts these videos on YouTube. They're about 2 to 5 minutes long, and it's like an update to the American public. And he tells the American public, Pete Hegseth tells the American public in these videos what he is instituting within the War Department. Now, 2 weeks ago to 3 weeks ago, he issued a statement stating on how the the clergy within the military are to wear their uniform and how they are to work with service members in their religious capacity, and that he was going to change some of the rules. All right. Now, he just let go the highest commanding general for the clergy. The chaplains, I guess is the term they use. The chaplains. All right. He let go. At the same time, he let go this guy. All right. General George. So he let go also the head of the clergy, the head of the chaplain force in the army. And then there was also a general that was involved in instituting changes within the army, that department. There was a video that was also issued about 2 to 3 weeks ago stating on how Pete Hegseth is forcing the generals to take a look at all of their departments, get rid of duplicative work, and how to actually restructure the legal part of each of these departments, saying it's too bloated, there's too much bureaucracy, and that he wanted a plan, and that for that plan to be instituted within 6 months. I suspect that what is happening with General George, the general that was in charge of the chaplains, and the general that was in charge of changing processes and procedures within the army, they all were let go because they were slow walking policy. That's my take on this.
Admiral, head of the Navy, Chief of Naval Operations, and then of course General Cruz, Lieutenant General Cruz, head of DIA, and others have been removed as well. So they're not afraid of removing flag and general officers, but this is still a big deal, but not unexpected because it's who we replace him with that I'm really looking.
Okay, who did he replace him with?
Well, he replaced him with Christopher Neve, and that's kind of an interesting thing. Randy George was the senior military aide or advisor to basically, I was going to say Hegseth's predecessor in the Biden administration. Neve was the senior military advisor for Hegseth, the Secretary of War. So there is a certain continuity, if you will, that the senior advisor gets moved into being, moved up into being the head of the Army. And you got to remember that Hegseth was a former Army officer. He'd served for many years. He'd served over in a variety of assignments around the world, combat in Iraq. So he knew the Army. He understands the Army. He's probably a little partial to the Army. I've been known to be a little biased towards the Marine Corps at times, shocking but true. And so he does know the Army, and I think that was something he felt strong about. And Christopher Neve, certainly Randy George had a very impressive record, combat commands, all sorts of stuff. But Christopher Neve was with the commander of 82nd Airborne between 1922 23. Certainly very accomplished. And one thing, when you're the Secretary of Defense, you want to have, service chiefs and the chairman and others who you can really rely upon, who you can really kind of understand their judgment, their thinking. And that's something he has with Neve. Not something that, I don't know that that's something he necessarily had with Randy George, because he inherited General George from the previous administration.
Which makes sense as to then why it wouldn't necessarily be a big surprise, because he wants to put somebody in there that he can own, essentially, like, this is my guy, right? So Hegseth has done more than a dozen firings of top generals. Is that a lot? And then also, let's talk about the fact that this isn't just any given Thursday. And we heard from the president last night where today marks day 33 of the war in Iran. The fact that we're doing this in the midst of a war, and what does that mean? That can't be good, or does it not necessarily matter as much as we might think?
Well, it's not going to change up a lot of things with the war itself. He's not an operational commander. Yes, he's a 4-star general. He's the chief of staff for the Army, but he's in charge of a service. He's not in charge of something like U.S. Central Command. So it's a little bit different. Certainly, you don't like to see a lot of turmoil at the top ranks during times of war, but on the other hand, these things do happen. And certainly, if you go back to our history of war, World War II, World War I. The Civil War is kind of famous because Lincoln was firing generals left and right until he found a general he could really count on, who was Ulysses S. Grant. So it does happen in time of war. So it's not a shock. And also, I will say this: I would assume, being a former Army officer, that he's a little bit more focused on the Army. And I think the Army is a great service. They do a wonderful job. As we like to say in the Marine Corps, it's always nice to know they're behind us. But sorry, my inner voice came out on that one. But
we appreciate your inner voice.
Okay, anyway,
just being you, Al. Very good.
I'm just being me. I can't help it. Anyway, but with that, he would be a little more inclined to focus on the Army Chief of Staff and the Army as a whole, simply because of his background. And he inherited an Army Chief of Staff for over a year. While he was there, and certainly there's a pattern we've seen where they like to get their own choices in these top jobs. And Dan Kane was rather surprising. I mean, they chose Dan Kane as chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Dan Kane had been actually retired for a year, and they had to bring him back on active duty and make him a 4-star general. So this is not unusual. And so I don't read too much into it, and I don't think it's going to be that disruptive.
Well, let me ask you this: that apparently he's had would you agree with this? Impressive rise, a quick rise for an officer who was only a 2-star general just 2 years ago.
He's moved fast. I will tell you that is not something that I've seen that is that shocking either. I can remember a Marine Commandant that I served with when he was a brigadier general during Desert Storm, and I just shake my head how fast it was that next thing you know, he pinned on 2 stars. He got back, pinned on 2 stars, then he pinned on 3 stars. I don't even know if he served a full year as a 3-star general before he got his 4-star.
Is this sort of a thing of being in the right place at the right time? I don't want to say nepotism because this is a familial thing, but you get what I'm asking.
It's not so much nepotism, but look, when you get into the flag and general officer ranks, there are politics, all right, service politics, and there's just anyone in the military will tell you there are politics at the top levels, and so when you're a general officer or flag officer, your movement up can be a variety of different things. I served very closely with an officer who became a 3-star general. And only found out years later, I was kind of scratching my head because it was amazing how he moved up. And I mean, he's a good guy, very qualified and everything else, but it turns out that there was a 4-star Marine general that just had his eye on him. And those things happen. And, if you find it with service bias, you'll sometimes find it outside of service bias. I remember we had a commandant of the Marine Corps who was not a likely choice to become commandant. And there was a meeting with senior officers and the Secretary of Navy, and they explained why this was the commandant you wanted. And next thing you know, Secretary of Navy turned around and said, "That's who I want." And it surprised everybody. So there are politics, there are preferences, there's a lot of different reasons why.
Like in every other industry and sector. Final question then, with all of that said, does he have, in your opinion, is he qualified for this post then? You feel comfortable with him?
As far as I can tell, he's fully qualified. And I think part of it is he's going to bring in a fresh perspective. The other thing is, I think he'll be very effective working with the Secretary of War because, well, he knows him quite well. He's worked with him for the last year or so. There'll be a certain rapport there that they have that will probably be very positive in terms of policy. Now, people will disagree with the policies, but I will tell you that at least they know each other, they understand each other, they know how each other thinks. And at the 4-star rank with the cabinet, with the secretary, that is so important, is to have that level of communication, understanding. trust, confidence, if you will, in your service chiefs, and certainly, you know, the chairman and the vice chair. So I think that'll be a very positive thing.
All right. Well, we appreciate you, Hal, as always. He is Hal Kempert, National Security Analyst. And
all right, we're going to play a 2-minute clip. We're going to play a 2-minute clip. They're also talking about the other 2 generals that were fired at the same time.
The major shakeup in Washington, Pam Bondi is out as U.S. Attorney General, and she's not the only one out of a job tonight. Eyewitness News reporter Leanne Suter live with the new fallout. Leanne.
Mark, that's right. A major shakeup indeed. 3 top generals, including the Army Chief of Staff, are out, as well as the nation's top law enforcement leader.
Pam Bondi has been staunchly loyal to the president, President Trump, the greatest president in American history.
But that wasn't enough to keep her position as Attorney General. President Trump posting on social media, quote, "We love Pam and she will be transitioning to a much needed and important new job in the private sector." The 2 seen together just yesterday, the president calling her his friend.
Attorney General Pam, my friend Pam Bondi.
Sources tell ABC News Trump had grown frustrated with Bondi's inability to successfully prosecute his political enemies, like former FBI Director James Comey and New York's Attorney General Letitia James. Democrats celebrating her departure.
She's been trying to play cover-up for President Trump from day one, and I am glad that she is gone.
Republicans thanking her for her work, but many had also grown frustrated with her handling of the Epstein files. Bondi's sudden departure not the only shakeup in Washington today. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has asked Army Chief of Staff General Randy George to step down. A Pentagon spokesperson said General George, who has had the post since August of 2023, will be retiring effective immediately. No reason was given. The Department of War announcing 2 other top generals have been fired. General David Hogney, head of the Army's Transformation and Training Command, as well as Major General William Green.
All right, these are the 2 other generals that I was talking about. The transition general, all right, because he was slow walking policy. Because if you pay attention what Pete Hegseth said 2 to 3 weeks ago, what he wanted to change with the different branches of service. And then Pete Hegseth also had a separate video talking about the change of the chaplain corps, or whatever term they use, but I'll call it the chaplain corps, right? This is all happening at the same time.
General David Hogney, head of the Army's Transformation and Training Command, as well as Major General William Green, the Army's Chief of Chaplains. Back at the DOJ, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche will be taking over as interim Attorney General. Days ago, Blanche touting the department's removal of agents and prosecutors who worked on criminal cases involving Trump.
There is not a single man or woman at the Department of Justice who had anything to do with those prosecutions.
It's unclear if Blanche will remain in that position. Any new Attorney General will have to be confirmed by the Senate. Reporting live, Leanne Suter, ABC Stuff.
Okay. So the big takeaway with that is pay attention to what Pete Hegseth states when he does these videos on YouTube, and he, discusses a new policy or an order. All right. He does these 2 to 5 minute videos. Really important, because about 2 to 3 weeks later, you actually see what's happening. All right. So he's already telegraphing what's going to happen. And there's also a big announcement about JAG and about the legal departments restructuring, getting rid of the dead weight, getting rid of duplicative work, separating something that should be more in the private sector versus the military, trying to make the JAG and the legal team within the military more streamlined. So I would not be surprised if there's further shakeups coming. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the probiotics. You can get it in the powder form or the veggie cap form. I prefer taking the powder one because I mix it with my lunch. I take hummus each day. But Either one will help. This is very high quality. This will help to bring down inflammation at the gut level, improve your immune system at the gut level. You'll be able to absorb your nutrients better. Your metabolism will improve. Your skin will improve. Also, brain function will improve. You'll be able to sleep better. You'll have less brain fog. You'll be able to concentrate and have better memory. So please go to my store and get the probiotics. Take them every day. Good gut health will help your overall health. It starts at the gut. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now what we're going to do is we're going to now pivot to this game theory video I'm going to be playing. I don't agree 100% to this, but keep in mind when you're watching this section of this video, keep in mind of the hypothesis that I have. That is, on September 11, 2026, there's going to be a curse that happens. Why? The shofar during Rosh Hashanah is not blown because it coincides with the Sabbath. You can't blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Why is that important? Blowing the shofar silences Satan, so it allows for a blessing to come down on earth. But if the shofar isn't blown, you can't silence Satan or Satan, depending on how you want to pronounce it. But you can't silence Satan. And because of that, a curse can happen on the earth. Now, October 7, 2023, that time period, that specific date was actually Simchas Torah in Israel. But Simchas Torah is the end of a long series of holidays. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, right? And then Simchas Torah. In 2023, Rosh Hashanah coincided with the Sabbath. The shofar was not blown. All right. In addition, you have to keep in mind the red heifers. There were 5. I believe 3 are still kosher to be able to be ritually slaughtered. They have not been slaughtered. So Israel's going to get a curse because they didn't slaughter the red heifers on Mount Olive. In addition, look at what's happening in the world. You're starting to hear there may be food shortages because of lack of fertilizer. There's going to be energy shortages in certain regions of the world, especially in Asia. There's political instability. There's also financial instability. Look at the debt cliffs that are happening in Europe. What about the erosion of society's cohesion culturally in Europe and in the United States because of poor immigration policy? Look at the insurgence of communism in certain cities in the United States or even in Europe. These are all starting to emerge into a curse, setting up the stage for certain things to happen. Now, when this curse starts, so what happens is on sundown, September 11th, 2026, the shofar is not blown. That opens up a door, a gateway, where there's a curse that will come down instead of a blessing. And that curse will start to get worse and worse and worse each day based on the ingredients that are starting to emerge pre-curse, like all the ingredients that we're seeing right now. All right? And they will work together. These emergent variables will work together and get magnified. And there'll be an emergent property that you can't be able to predict, but there will be an emergent property that takes place that curses everybody. Now, some people will think they're being blessed, and in the end, they get cursed. But most people, what will happen is they get cursed, and then in the end, there's a blessing. All right? Now, but this curse, this door that or gate will open up on September 11th, 2026, and will not close until the first week of October of 2027. So you're talking about a long period of time, a year, where something really bad's coming. And there was going to be another curse shock in subsequent years in 2028 and 2029 that is going to piggyback off of this curse that's taking place in 2027, in 2026. Okay? So there'll be a time where there's a little bit of relief on October 2027, and then it reemerges in 2028 and 2029. We're talking financial markets, we're talking food supply, we're talking energy, we're talking political stability, we're talking world war. And the reason why the curse is happening is because of the decisions that the world has made since October 7th. From a religious point of view, the rabbis did not make the decision to slaughter the red heifer, the paraduma. They decided not to do it. For what reason, I don't know. But if you take lessons learned from what has been written in the Old Testament, there were many times where Jews were supposed to do something and they were afraid. And then there was a curse. And it took generations to undo that curse. Now, so there's that side of it. But take a look at what the world and how they have conducted themselves since October 7th. The international community demonized Israel in trying to destroy Hezbollah and Hamas. The world is demonizing Trump for trying to defang or declaw Iran. Everyone's so focused on the Epstein files. There's a curse coming. Nobody is going to get away from this. Nobody. No matter how religious you think you are, to the very lowly person. Everyone is going to be affected. Different degrees of being affected, but the whole world is going to get this curse because of the way mankind has behaved since 2023. Everyone is getting cursed. That means Tucker Carlson. That means Megyn Kelly. That means you, me, Trump, Barron, Melania. Everybody is going to get cursed. No one is not going to be affected. All right. Now, this professor, I'm not 100% aligned with him. Sometimes I think he's a little pro-China and not, and he's pro-China at times, and it seems as though he's negative America, negative America, not on Team America. But he is explaining the international maneuvering that will take place, the emergent property that will take place within this curse that I've been telling everybody about. So the metaphysics of what I just mentioned about the curse that's coming is going to manifest internationally based on what this guy's going to say. All right. So you need to really pay attention. No one out there is saying this. There's nobody. No religious podcast, no, geopolitical podcast, no one's putting all the pieces together. All right. This is the first time that you're going to see this. So it's really important that you share this link because I'm 100% right on this. The world is going to get cursed. Nothing's going to stop this. And it's going to be bad.
About an hour ago, Donald Trump addressed the American people. This follows an address from Prime Minister Albanese of Australia to his people, as well as Prime Minister Starmer to the British people. And in both speeches by Starmer and Albanese, they said to the people, We know that fuel prices, gas prices are going up, and we should expect more pain, but we will do as much as we can to ensure that your wallet is not too impacted. Donald Trump, in his address to the American people, basically said that this war will continue, and America may start to bomb energy and oil infrastructure of Iran. Okay, so let's listen to a few of his words.
Our economy is strong and improving by the day, and it will soon be roaring back like never before. It will top the levels that it was a month ago. I've made clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury that we will continue until our objectives are achieved. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
Okay, so he's basically saying that we're winning this war and we will bomb them to the Stone Ages, which tells us.
Now, think about that. The Middle East is only modern because of oil. If you take them back to the Middle Ages, that means something happens with their oil in terms of demand, in terms of supply, in terms of something. All right? Keep that in mind. Oh, and another thing that keeps...
He's definitely not winning this war. Okay?
No. Keep in mind, when Jacob and his sons went into Goshen, what did Esau? What was happening with Esau? Esau was given Mount Seir as a heritage. All right? Now that is metaphysical, that the Muslim community, all right, Ishmael and Esau and the Persians, and, you know, Esau is a little bit more an amalgamation of many things. All right? But Esau, in this context, Iran, Esau is given something, and if he doesn't do something proper for the world, doesn't use his gifts in a positive way, he will be destroyed. He will have to repent. He is decapitated physically and metaphorically. And that there is this separation between the intellect and the animal soul, in the animalistic behaviors of Esau. So there's a repentance that takes place. And the negative, the positive Esau will align with Jacob. The negative will be destroyed. Okay? Keep that in mind. There's a metaphysical thing that's happening here with Esau. And Ishmael and Esau have been given the opportunity to use their endowed gifts from God, oil, for good. Yet, since I've been born, there's been nothing but Islamic terror. For 50 years. For over 50 years, Islamic terror. So we are seeing the separation of Esau. We're seeing the curse coming down on Esau.
I also want to look at another person who is Peter Hegseth.
Strategic back.
Another
So remember,
another thing that he doesn't mention because he's not focused on the metaphysics, Pete Hegseth. Seth. his soul root's coming right out of Egypt.
This war in Iran, it's not ending. In fact, many people believe it's only starting to ramp up. So there are rumors that Donald Trump has already authorized the use of ground forces. And so we could see an invasion of Iran as early as this weekend, but certainly, definitely this month, okay? But while America is fighting this war in Iran, this is the Secretary of War, Peter Hegseth, and he's announced that America will control all North America.
From Greenland to the Gulf of America to the Panama Canal and its surrounding countries. At the Department of War, we call this strategic map the Greater North America. Why? Because every sovereign nation and territory north of the equator, from Greenland to Ecuador and from Alaska to Guyana, is not part of the global South. It is a security perimeter in this great neighborhood that we all live in.
Okay? So basically, what he's saying is we will enforce the Monroe Doctrine in North America. So it sounds very strange to people in that Donald Trump is fighting this war in Iran that's not really winnable. At the same time, he is being aggressive in North America. He's seeking fights with Canada, with Denmark over Greenland, with Colombia, with Mexico, with Cuba. In fact, he's embargoing Cuba right now. People expect possibly an invasion of Cuba very soon. So people just think that Donald Trump is all over the place and he's idiotic, okay? So this is Iran, and everyone says that a ground invasion of Iran would be stupid because it is much too large to invade. Right now, America has only about 50,000 troops in the Middle East, and the geography, the terrain, makes it very hard to control, okay? So you have these mountains, the Zagros Mountains, which allows for Iranians to hide and conduct guerrilla warfare and use drone strikes and artillery strikes. And then you have the desert, which makes it very hard to cross, okay? So even if the Americans were to attack from here, from Iraq, they would have to face the mountains. If they were attacked from Pakistan, from the east, they would have to face deserts, okay? And if they were to attack from the south, they would face all these mountains. And also you're far away from Tehran, which is ultimately your objective. Okay, so there's lots of conversations about what the Americans are trying to do. Right now, the consensus seems to be the Americans first want to control the Strait of Hormuz in order to elevate the strain on the global economy, okay? But as you can see from this map, first of all, the strait is not very wide, and it's very close to the Iranian coastline on the mountain, so it's easy to attack from. And there are these, and then the Iranians can put mines all around the strait as well. So what everyone tells us is that an invasion of Iran would just be idiotic. At the same time, the Americans need to free up the Strait of Hormuz and allow for maritime navigation in order to stabilize the global economy. Okay? Already we're seeing lots of signs that America is preparing for a long, long war. So there are already 50,000 troops in the Middle East, and a lot of them will be deployed against Iran. But also, there's a letter from Leonard Anderson to reserves, telling them we must get ready to deploy, fight, and win. Okay? So not only have they sent 50,000 troops to the Middle East, but they're preparing to call the reserves as well. Okay, so this seems as though America is preparing for total war. Coin market is a very interesting place to understand how global events will turn out, okay? And so there are three indicators that, in fact, a war is coming, a ground invasion is coming. First of all, the pizza index is exploding. What does this mean? It means that in the Pentagon, when they're preparing to launch a ground innovation, they need to work overtime. And so they call for pizza, okay? And so pizza deliveries are going up. Gay bars are empty, okay? So when people are, don't have much to do, they go and, go on dates. The last is that people are making bets, large bets, that a ground innovation will happen, okay? So these are people who have inside information, and so they go on coin market and make a bet that this will happen, knowing it will happen. So this guy bet $200,000 that a ground innovation will happen, and if it turns out a ground innovation does happen, he will win over $1 million. Okay, so these are three very good indicators that a ground innovation has been approved and it will happen very, very soon. Okay. Donald Trump himself has said many, many things, okay? So he said that, you know what? If we leave the Middle East, it's not our problem. We don't really care, okay? And he also says that, hey, NATO, it's your responsibility to open the Strait of Hormuz because we told you so and because you need the oil. And of course, NATO is angry at Donald Trump because previously Donald Trump threatened to take over Greenland. Okay, so everyone thinks Donald Trump is just a moron. He doesn't plan ahead because before this war in Iran, where he needs the help of NATO, he was pissing off NATO by trying to take over Greenland. So Donald Trump is over the place. He's just a moron, right? But let's just assume, okay?
All right, before he positions to his next argument, when he says he thinks that maybe Trump is a moron, there's comma, but maybe he is a genius. Now watch. But before we do that, I want to just plug some more products here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work that I do. I'm trying to inform the public about what's potentially going to happen to the financial markets and how to improve your health, especially due to the aftershock of the crisis that we went through in 2020. If you pay attention to me, you'll be able to improve your health, slow down the aging process. Clarity factor. This will get rid of brain fog. It'll allow you to concentrate on tasks and improve your dendritic connections so you're thinking faster and have better memory. Take this every day. Drink it with filtered water. It's a very powerful neurostat. Myotrol. This is really important to help to build muscle and to maintain muscle. When you get older, your gene expression starts to decline for muscles. That's why you start to atrophy. If you're 40 years of age, male or female, you will benefit from taking Myotrol. In addition, if you're an athlete, younger or older, you will also benefit by taking Myotrol because it'll help you gain strength for your sport. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle, to reduce atrophy. Really important to take. And when you are building up more muscle, improving your posture, you'll be more active and you'll have more longevity, more vitality. So please go to my store, get the Myotrol, get the clarity factor. You're helping with your muscles, you're helping with your brain. It's a great stack to slow down the aging process. Make sure you use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Please help support the work that I do by getting the great products and sharing the links.
What will happen? Well, as I predicted before, if a ground innovation were to go ahead, first of all, America would lose this war because the ground innovation would fail. The Iranians are fully prepared for a ground innovation. Second of all, if America loses war, the American empire would die because it would be forced out of the Middle East. It would lose the petrodollar and the US dollar as a global reserve currency. And the third thing is the global economy would collapse. So clearly, Donald Trump is the worst president in human history. And he's a complete buffoon, right? Okay. But let's put our thinking caps on. Okay, let's use game theory and say, but what if, for some strange reason, Donald Trump wants to lose this war in Iran? What if he wants the American empire to collapse? What if Donald Trump wants to destroy the global economy? And then he'd be a genius.
So there's events that are emerging right now before 9/11, 2026 that's going to set the stage for the curse. And because of this change in world order, there is going to be hardship for some nations. Some nations will feel the hardship early on in the timeline. Some will feel it later in the timeline. But it's starting to set the stage for the ingredients for the curse to happen. That's my main point here. And what is going to transpire with these different movements geopolitically is heavily predicated on what happens in Iran. This is the battle between Jacob and Esau that has been written down for thousands of years. This is the point, this is the part he doesn't get. He doesn't get the metaphysics of this because he didn't read the Zohar. If you don't believe me, read the Zohar. It's a lot of reading and it's very hard. But if you don't believe me, just read the Zohar. Everything I'm saying is in there. So he's setting up the stage that, well, wait a minute here. The loss in Iran is actually going to reset the New World Order.
Right? He's a moron because he's going to destroy the American empire. But if he actually wants to destroy the American empire, then the man is the greatest American president ever, okay? Okay, so we're gonna have a fun class today, and we're gonna make the argument that in fact...
Now, Trump's soul root is tied, not 100%, but is tied to a few different presidents. George Washington, JFK. Some people say Nixon and Reagan. It's not all one type of president. There's an amalgamation of them. If you ask Trump, maybe even Andrew Jackson. But there's a strong soul root with George Washington. And we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the founding of our country. There is a reset with this. The U.S. soul root is tied to actually the planetary movement of Pluto. The cycle of Pluto is tied to the United States. And we finished the grand cycle of Pluto around the sun. All right? So this alignment is setting in motion a rebirth of the United States. And what was the last speech that George Washington said when he left office? Beware of foreign entanglements. George Washington's soul is echoing through 250 years later, is echoing through Trump. Don't bet against the United States. There's going to be a curse, and it's going to affect everybody, but don't bet against the United States in the long term. Trust me on this. Now, let's continue here.
Yes. That in fact, all this chaos is purposeful. That there's actually a plan behind all this, okay? That's the argument I want to make to you today. Okay.
Now, so he thinks that there's a grand strategy that's human that can plan this. I take it that what he's saying in terms of events that could happen as we move into the curse that starts September 11, 2026, is an emergent behavior that's not planned. but our actions set it in motion. It's not planned, but it's going to happen this way. That is the nuance of my take on this and his take. There's a metaphysical component here that goes all the way back 2,000 years.
What is going on here? All right, so first thing to notice is that the world gets 20%, okay? 20% of its oil from the Middle East, okay? Primarily going to East Asia. So India gets about 6% of its oil from the Middle East, Japan gets 75%.
Breaking news from the BBC, American fighter jet shot down in Iran, US and Iranian media report. So I'm going to try to find a little bit of information on that, but we're going to continue playing this.
Oil from the Middle East. So East Asia is heavily dependent on Middle East oil, okay? But as you can see, it also goes to Europe as well, and then also to the United States, all right? So the world is dependent on the GCC oil. If this war continues, if ground forces are used, then all the oil from the Middle East collapses. And JP Morgan has come out and said that by mid-April, the world will run out of oil. Okay? So this is a disaster for the world. But it's not, it's just much more than energy needs, okay? So this, because Iran is constraining movement in the Strait of Hormuz, we're seeing 7 major shortages. Okay, so yes, we know oil and LNG are being stopped. Okay, but actually the problem is much worse because look at phosphate, ammonium, sulfur, urea. This is food production. Okay, primarily used for fertilizers. In other words, if this war persists, not only will countries run out of energy, they'll also run out of food. Okay? Also, look at this.
And as the curse starts on September 11th, 2026, what is happening around the world? In many areas, food yield will go down in the fall. That's when the harvesting is. The fertilizer is diminished. And it's very similar. When the world goes into Golis, when the world goes into hell, there's a story in the Old Testament where the sons of Jacob go down into Egypt to sojourn. That's the story of a group of people going to hell. A lot of people don't understand that. Egypt is hell. It's a fib sequence. There was a group of people that lived on this plane that did things that represented a metaphysical existence or metaphysical reality. All right, in a different plane. And the whole world now is slowly moving into Golis. It's slowly moving into hell. And because of these slow emerging properties, slowly setting up the stage for the big curse, people don't realize that that gate that's opened up, everyone is going to be marching into hell. Now, what was some of the things that happened in hell in the story? The plagues. When people started to get out, that they were going to be expelled from hell, when the Jews were going to be expelled from Egypt or hell. All right? What was happening? Plagues, famines, pestilence. The United States just hit the Pasteur vaccine facility. Why do you think they did that? Because they're knocking out their bioweapon development in Iran. So there's curses that will manifest as plagues, famine, financial problems, health issues, pestilence. It's starting to emerge right here.
Are used for what? They're used for semiconductors, the production of semiconductors. Use helium and sulfuric acid in the production of semiconductors, which leads to AI, okay? So, in other words, this war in the Middle East, it's impacting everything in the modern economy. Okay, if this war continues, the global.
Now think about it. We had this global economy, a lot of prosperity in many nations. Not every nation was prosperous, but many nations were. The standard of living went up, even though there was a lot of indebtedness in the United States. But many countries, many people that were in the rural area that were poor ended up rising up. Right? Since World War II, the standard of living for the world has increased. No one can deny that. Now, that doesn't mean it's been perfect, but the standard of living of the world went up. And we still, as the human race, can't get our act together. And the test was, what are you and what is your society going to do after October 7th? How did you position yourself? Were you on the good side or the bad side? And now everyone's being judged. You had all this prosperity since World War II. You had all of this opportunity to dream whatever you wanted to dream, and it could manifest because of lots of resources, a world economy that was integrated, and that's all getting smashed apart now. I mean, before World War II, before World War I, Europe seemed to be copacetic. Things were going great. There was a lot of actually global commerce and interconductivity amongst nations pre-World War I. It took the world all the way to 1970s to get to the same globalization that they had pre-World War I. A lot of people don't know that. It took almost 60 years to get to the same level of globalization. Don't you think it's going to take a long time after the world gets cursed? After this, we're already in World War III. So, things are starting to emerge. Things are starting to manifest itself. And there's not just one curse. It's a series of curses. Famines, pestilence, lack of opportunities, stress, early death.
Again, we're making the assumption that Donald Trump is a genius, and this is all part of his big plan. Okay, so what is his plan?
It's not one person planning this. It's not a cabal planning this. It's an emergent property of our stupidity. It just so happens that the United States will be better off in the long run. But we're going to be feeling pain. A lot of it. A lot of pain.
All right. So, okay, we know that there's a lot of oil in the Middle East. Okay? But, you know, oil is not as rare as people think it is. There's also a lot of oil in Canada. Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves. Okay? Russia also has a lot of oil. So in other words, if
this is why I've been saying that the reason why we went into Iran was because we were so successful in Venezuela. We were able to secure the heavy crude that we needed to make sure that Pad 3, which is in Texas and Louisiana refineries, and Pad 2, which is in the Midwest, were able to make sure that they can produce downstream product because they need the heavy crude. If they didn't have that, we would need it from the Middle East because they have medium viscosity crude. So we secured our energy before we started kicking the shit out of the Iranians.
If this war in the GCC continues, it doesn't mean the world no longer has oil. All it means is the world is now much more dependent on North America and Russia for oil. And so the global economy now shifts over to North America and to Russia. Okay? So in other words, the United States starts a stupid war in the GCC.
Now the GCCs, with their revenues starting to decline, their society starts to devolve. And so now the Shia and Sunnis start to fight each other.
In the Middle East, it can't possibly win, but it still benefits. Because now the world is much more dependent on North America. Okay? Why is Venezuela important? Because America just took over Venezuela in January. Okay? And look, Canada has a lot of oil, and Trump is threatening to take over Canada.
Now we need the heavy crude from the oil sands from Canada to feed Pad 2 in the Midwest. And oh, by the way, you ever wonder why did we need the Keystone Pipeline? Think about that for a second. Was it just to export energy, or was it also to move it between Pad 3 and Pad 2?
Now let's look at who needs the oil. Well, this map.
In addition, the United States was against Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, with Russia building pipelines to be able to feed Europe, because the United States wants to sell energy to Europe, especially LNG. He's not wrong here. He's just not realizing that there's an emergent property because of what's happening that's going to lead to a big curse for everybody in the world. But in the end, the United States is going to be on top here.
That in the red, you consume more oil than you export. And who are these countries? Well, they're Europe, okay? And they are East Asia, as well as Australia. Okay? So, yes, I understand Donald Trump's an idiot. Yes, I understand that he's going to lose this war in the Middle East. Yes, I understand he's going to destroy the global economy. But for some strange reason, he benefits. And the United States benefits. Yep. Because now Europe and China.
That strange benefit is where you have a curse that you, because of the war that's taking place and further decline economically. But what happens is that a blessing can be wrapped up in a curse. And that's why I'm saying that not everybody's going to be cursed the same way. But there's a big curse coming. And people are going to be affected. You either feel the pain early or you feel the pain later. But everyone's going to feel the pain.
Australia, they are much more dependent on North America for resources, for food, for energy. Okay? All right, food. Okay, so nitrogen is important for fertilizers. Okay, you need nitrogen for fertilizers. And as you can, and what this map tells you is that if you are in the blue or the light blue, it means you produce more nitrogen than you need, so you export it. If you are not in the blue, then you're kind of screwed, okay? So basically, this area especially, this area, okay? Europe is some parts of Europe, okay? So now they need more nitrogen. And again, before they were getting a lot of nitrogen, ammonia, from the Middle East. And now, where are they forced to get the nitrogen? From here and from here.
So Russia and Canada.
So again, yes, I know Donald Trump's losing this war in the Middle East, but in the long term, America stands to benefit. Okay. Last thing I want to look at is water. Okay. Water is important because water tells us which areas are the most stable. Basically, if you have a lot of water, you're less prone to conflict. But if you don't have that much water, then you're prone to conflict. Okay. So we look at. So if you're in the dark blue, you're good. Okay. Nothing to worry about. If you are in the light blue, you are in a lot of trouble. Okay. So we look at this area, North America, pretty stable because lots and lots of fresh water. Okay. If you look at Russia, pretty stable, lots and lots of fresh water. But if you're Africa, you're in a lot of trouble. If you're Europe, you're in a lot of trouble. If you are Middle East, you're in a lot of trouble. If you are Southeast Asia, you are not in much trouble, but you are in some trouble. Okay. So we already see how this map tells us where in the future, basically Russia and the United States, North America, are the most stable parts of the world with the most resources. And therefore, they are the most resilient, the most stable, okay? But if you go to Africa, Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia, these are points of conflict in the world. So we expect these places to become much more unstable over time. So in other words, all the United States and Russia have to do is maintain stability and then export resources to these places. And guess what? And then they make a lot of money for themselves. Okay? So again, I understand Donald Trump's an idiot. I understand this war in the Middle East is stupid, but from a long-term game theory perspective, the United States wins from this disaster from a long-term perspective, okay?
And why, from the metaphysical, the United States is aligned to Jacob, not Esau. There's more Jacob in the country's soul root than Esau. That's why. That's why. Right there. But we're going to be going through a lot of pain while this is starting to reconfigure. The New World Order, I mean, even people like Carney over in Canada, or the ones that are in Europe, the leaders in Europe, they've already stated the New World Order's dead. That Trump smashed it apart. Now we're starting to see this thing kind of emerge. But because religious individuals within Israel didn't do the ritual slaughter of the paraduma, the red heifer, because that has not happened on Mount Olive, there's a curse coming. And it's not just going to be on religious people in Israel. It's going to be the whole fucking world.
You look at this map and think, well, China's pretty good too, right? Like China has a lot of fresh water. The problem with China, though, is this. China sits on a lot of fresh water that Southeast Asia and India depends on, okay? So a lot of water is in the Tibetan Plateau. It flows downstream into India and in Southeast Asia. If there were a drought, using game theory, we can suspect that China might want to keep the water for itself, right? In which case, Southeast Asia and India would be very angry, okay? So this is a potential flashpoint that we have to watch out for. Okay, so it seems like China is stable, but these are.
And therefore, India would probably align with the United States if there was military conflict that arises over Taiwan.
Many areas are not so stable, and so China will be dragged into a conflict. Okay. All right. So let's summarize what we've learned so far. So these are the countries with the most oil reserves. Okay, Venezuela. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Canada, Iraq, UAE, Kuwait, United States, Russia. Okay. All right. Now, what's interesting about this is this. This war in the Middle East is going to knock out the oil production of Saudi Arabia, of Iran, of Iraq, of UAE, of Kuwait, which leaves what? Which leaves...
Exactly.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. Esau, with Mount Seir and its blessing, loses its blessing. It was given an endowment. They used it poorly. They created Islamic terror, did not align and be peaceful with Jacob and Israel, and therefore it's going to be taken away from them. And that's what you're seeing right here. God is taking away the oil from the Middle East. The flows. Now you could kind of see, well, as Saudi Arabia was starting to try to wane off of oil as a major component of their economy, and they wanted to monetize their economy, they are starting to increase debt. And so their society is unstable if the oil money flows start to decline now, because they haven't fully gone through a modernization of their economy. They're still heavily dependent on cash flows from oil. And that's true for Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran. So you're going to see major instability that will take place here. So here you can see the curse is coming down on to Shia and Sunni Islam. But there's still going to be a curse on Israel because they didn't do the ritual slaughtering of the red heifer. Now people would say, what's the reason for the curse in the United States? Take a look at all the nefarious things that the United States does, geopolitically, but even the infighting within the country. Do you think the country's better in the last 5 years in terms of civilness? No, absolutely not. And so we have to be purged. We have to be cursed to see our wrongdoings and therefore repent and move forward.
Venezuela, Canada, and the United States, okay? North America, and Russia. Okay? Now, then let's look at who has to buy oil. All right? Let's look at who buys oil. Well, the United States consumes a lot of oil, but again, it has its own supply of oil. China needs to import a lot of its oil needs, okay? So China imports about 75% of its oil needs. India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Japan, South Korea, okay? Germany, all right? So China, India, Japan, South Korea, imports a lot of oil. And where does it get its oil from? The Middle East, right? So if it can't get its oil from the Middle East, then these four countries, China, India, Japan, and South Korea, needed to get the oil either from the United States or Russia. Okay? And what does this matter? Well, let's look at this. Let's look at who owns the most U.S. treasuries. Basically, you own a lot of U.S. treasuries, it means that you are financing American debt. America right now is $39 trillion in debt. That's a lot of money, but as long as people continue to buy U.S. debt, as long as people want to buy U.S. treasuries, it's not a problem, okay? It's a Ponzi scheme. Okay. So let's look at this. Who are the biggest holders of U.S. debt? Japan, China, right? Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, India. Okay, so this is all Asia. And we already said that Asia needs a lot of oil from the Middle East, right? Now let's look at others. United Kingdom is second, okay? Cayman Islands is basically just Europe as well. It's a money operation, okay? Belgium, Luxembourg, Canada, France, Ireland, Switzerland. These countries are Europe. And again, where do we say most oil from the GCC go? It goes to either Asia or Europe. And now because of the stupid war in the Middle East, Asia and Europe are now forced to buy oil from either Russia or the United States. And this is important, okay? This is important because previously there's a fear that these countries would stop buying U.S. treasuries because America is too heavily in debt. The American economy is too much of a Ponzi scheme. So there's this great fear that Europe and Asia would move away from the US dollar and more towards Swiss francs or gold, okay? Now, because Europe and Asia need fertilizer, they need energy from the United States and North America, the United States no longer has to worry about its debt, okay? All right, the $39 trillion debt, not a problem, because the entire world is dependent on North America for resources.
And so what this does is it bolsters up the petrodollar, and you can even say not just the petrodollar, the fertilizer dollar.
I see it keep on going. So again, Donald Trump is an idiot, but he's so stupid, he's become a genius.
And this is what I keep on saying. Trump is a very blessed individual. He's not an intellectual. I'm sure he hasn't read a full book in years, in decades, from cover to cover. He's smart. He has a lot of street smarts. But even better than street smarts, he's blessed. He's blessed more than you are. You have so many people that are podcasters or mainstream media analysts. They haven't done even a fraction of what Trump has done in terms of raising a good family and wealth and being consequential in the world. All these people that say negative things about Trump, they've done very little with their life. Why? Because they weren't blessed. Trump is blessed. He's a blessed person. Doesn't mean everything's going to go right. It's chaotic. But the guy is a blessed person. And that's the reason why. That's the reason that in the end, the United States will benefit from this. But the world is going to have a curse, including the people in the United States. Just like how there was a curse that fell on Israel right after October 7th, but slowly emerged as they were killing off Hamas and Hezbollah. And now Iran. Why? Because they weren't afraid. They didn't have, Israel will be successful with these three things. Don't be afraid. Don't pay attention to the international politics of what they're doing. Don't pay attention to the UN. And third, don't be hubris. As long as those three things happen, they will be successful. But there was definitely a curse that fell on Israel on October 7th. Why? The infighting between the seculars within, the non-religious within Israel, and the religious community. They were infighting. That's what I keep on saying. The infighting that's happening in the United States is going to be part of the reason why we will be cursed. But in the end, we will benefit.
Like, wait, but Donald Trump's an idiot. Where would he get this? Where would he get this idea from? How do you know how to do this? And the answer is because Putin has already proven that this strategy works in Ukraine. Okay, so let me show you how. Okay, so this is the war in Ukraine, and as you can see, the dark red.
Now, in my videos on Vaca Wars, for Vaca Wars, that series that I did a long time ago, 2021, 2022, something like that. I guess it was 2022. I said that Ukraine, there's a metaphysical component to this because many, not all, but many of the Hasidic movement and the philosophy was canonized in Ukraine. The Baal Shem Tov's from Ukraine. What does that mean? That means that the Kabbalistic things that are starting to emerge in this world today, in modern society, manifests itself to the Baal Shem Tov. And the fracturing of Ukraine is like taking a crystal, all right, and creating a tear of that crystal, and those ionic bonds are now charged. Like, for example, salt crystal, sodium chloride. Well, sodium and chlorine are bound together through electrical charges, ionic charges. And it's easy to fracture and break it apart, or put it in solution and they're charged particles. They're charged sodium and charged chlorine. So positive and negative. So in Kabbalistic thought, you can charge the Sephiros, the tree of life. You can tear it apart, and there's a negative side of it and a positive side. And in the center is a force. There's the right and the left, the positive and the negative, they want to come together. So there's tumult, there's turmoil in between these two sides. Same thing in an ionic bond. As the ionic bonds get closer and closer together, it comes together, it snaps together. All right? And it takes force to tear it apart. Ukraine is getting torn apart. So on a metaphysical level, there's a positive and a negative charge. And what this does is it allows for a flow of energy to happen. The war in Ukraine that started in 2022 is the beginning of World War III. And there is an energy force that's coming down metaphysically that is setting in motion the curse.
Areas in which Russia is contesting territory. The the pink are areas in which Russia wants to gain territory. As you can see, Russia still has a long way to go. And we're already 4 or 5 years into this war, which means that this war can go on for another 10, 20 years. It's a very slow grind. And it's good for Russia. Yes, I know that Russia is losing a lot of soldiers, And I know that the Russian economy is suffering, but this long war of attrition is good for Russia. Why? Well, because first of all, what it does is it allows Russia to industrialize its economy. Okay, it allows Russia to center its economy around.
See, this is at a metaphysical level. As long as Ukraine is torn, it creates an energy that allows for the curse to happen. That's what I said just minutes ago. All right. So as the war continues, it is building up the war machine in Russia and allowing for this recalibration of the New World Order between the United States and Russia.
Okay, so the red, as you can see, is total industry. Okay, and as you can see, it's been going up since the war started. All right, overall industry has been going up as well. Unfortunately, industries that are not dominated by the military, that have no war purpose, it's actually going down. Okay, so it seems as though the entire Russian economy is being restructured for total war, for a long war. And that is the purpose, that is the goal. Okay, so again, the pink are military industries. The blue are civilian industries. And as you can see, the pink completely dominate the blue. And the trend is increasing, meaning it is possible in 4 or 5 years' time, Russia is primarily a war economy, industrializing to produce war weapons, okay, munitions. Specifically,
transportation equipment, computer, electronics, and optical products, fabricated metal products. What is the United States focusing on? Metal, right? We want to improve our manufacturing domestically in steel and aluminum, controlling chip development and electronics. We're moving. The United States is moving towards a war machine. And this is part of the reason why Trump did the tariffs. Because he was saying you need to bring back manufacturing, because the globalists back in the day of the 90s, when they pushed NAFTA and shipping jobs to China for cheap spatulas from Walmart, it gutted our military. When my brother served in the military in the 90s, he served between Gulf War I, right? Right after Gulf War I, he enlisted. So war ended with the Gulf War. He was in the military just after the Gulf War. So, but when he left the military, he said that they were starting to gut spending. The Pentagon was slowly degrading the military because of lack of funding from Congress. And the ones that were hit the most were the Navy programs. But Army was also being gutted. And then they started issuing in that whole do not ask, do not tell thing from Clinton. And just the whole ambiance of serving in the military became kind of a joke. So it started right after the Gulf War. And so you had Bush Sr. and Clinton as presidents that were pushing this globalization of products. Same thing with Jack Welch from GE. He's dead now, but he was the guru, the MBA guru from GE, General Electric. on how to maximize shareholder value by moving your operations overseas. It weakened us. And now Trump's tariff policy is trying to reboot the manufacturing of the United States. We won World War II because of our manufacturing. We out-manufactured the Germans. You can't win war by pushing paper. You only win wars by making steel. It's that simple.
Drones, okay? These are drones. All right. So, before, at the beginning of the war, Russia was dependent on Iran for drones, okay? But then what happened over time is that Russia started to have its own domestic production, okay? So imports from Iran have stayed constant, and then domestic production has gone way up, which tells us that the Russian economy is industrializing for the production of drones.
And another thing is that history doesn't repeat, it rhymes because it's a fib sequence. And what is similar to drones? Kamikaze pilots during World War II. We are already in World War III.
And Russia is preparing to fight a long, long war. Now, not only can Russia produce its own drones for the war, but it can also export its drones to Iran to fight against the Americans. Okay? And so you're like, wait a minute here. So Russia is switching its entire economy to war production, which means that Russia will always fight wars. Is that what Russia is planning? And the answer is yes, it is. Okay? And so let me explain why Russia is planning this. This is what I call the Third Rome Plan. Okay? And this comes from the 1996 book, Foundations of Geopolitics, okay, by Arthur Dugan, who I think is one of the smartest geopolitical thinkers alive today. Okay, and his argument is this: his argument is this unipolar moment of American dominance. It's going to fade away because it's too much focus on secularism, individualism, liberalism, and these ideas break apart community. These ideas are anti-human. So eventually, Western society, Western civilization will collapse because its values are abhorrent. And when it collapses, this is opportunity for Moscow to become the third Rome, okay? We'll talk more about this in the future.
All right. Before we continue on with that, let me just plug a couple products here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. I give you some unique advice, and I also tell you how to improve your health. So please help support the channel. All this is for free. All these videos I do are for free. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work that I do by purchasing the great supplements that will help you to get healthy. Ashwagandha root will help to control blood glucose levels and bring down cortisol levels. This will help to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. When you bring down stress at the brain level, you're also improving your neurons. Lignans will help to soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation, help with your immune system and your endocrine system, brain function, and cardiovascular health. Structural nanosilver gel. You can get it in the tube form or the quick dispenser. You use them the same way. You can put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn. It'll help to heal it quicker. You can use it as a daily skincare to improve your skin. And if you're not feeling well during the cold season, or someone around you is not feeling well, something's going around, Put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose. Lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. Can't do that with Perel. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the dual purpose structural nanosilver gels. Guess what? They neutralize. That's why they're so important to take. If you have pain, joint pain due to sports injury or just through arthritis or even a headache or muscle pull or a bruise or a sprain, take the super strong relief. You apply it topically and it will relieve the pain within 90 seconds. It's really simple. If you have a headache, put it on your temples, around your forehead and around your neck and shoulder muscles, and it'll relieve your tension headache. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the super strong relief. It's really good for individuals that have arthritis or have some sort of sports injury.
About Dugin is he recognizes that when the world collapses, all Russia has to do is stay stable and resilient. As long as it stays together, unified, cohesive, it'll be fine. Okay? Because as this global order collapses, as the global economy collapses, every other society will face eternal collapse, such as the United States. Okay? So he predicts civil war in the United States as left and right go to war against each other. Okay? He predicts collapse.
And this is part of the curse of what's going to happen in the United States, because we weren't willing to come together and focus on the problems and work together. You have the ultra-liberal that wants to usher in communism, and you've got the ultra-right that only wants to think that everything is a domestic issue. Everything is, just America first, be a pacifist. Both are wrong.
China. He predicts collapse of the Middle East. He predicts collapse of Europe. Okay, so all these places are collapsing. Basically, if you are the main pillar of the global economy, you are much more susceptible to collapse than if you are not. Okay. So what Dugin says is this. Okay.
And the reason is it's the three pillars that I keep on saying: God, country, and family. And because that's been eroding in the United States, it's going to cause a problem. It's already eroded in Europe. It's going to cause a problem. You don't even have a European culture anymore. It's a caliphate. Look at Britain. What does it mean to be British anymore? English. English as a culture is dead. Why? Because of a caliphate.
So the strategy is, first of all, Russia needs to stay coherent. It needs to defend its territory. It needs to unify its people through nationalism, through religion, okay, through faith. And then what Russia needs to do is figure out allies that would support the Russian outlook. And these allies could include Japan, okay, Vietnam, India, Iran, okay? And then by combining their forces, they become a trading bloc onto themselves. This is an age of nuclear weapons. You don't want to go to war against each other. But this is also an age of collapse. So as long as you're able to stay coherent, as long as you're able to defend your borders, then you'll come out ahead, okay? So that's the idea of moving towards war, because war has a power to unify the imagination and the beliefs of the people in your nation, right? So using war in order to increase the nationalism, the religion of your society, which will allow you to weather the storm better, okay? So that is the grand vision of Alexander Dugin. And in my opinion, he's absolutely correct. And Russia is moving towards this by invading Ukraine, all right? So the Ukraine invasion was not a response to NATO. The Ukraine invasion was to implement this grand vision for the creation of a third Rome, to allow Russia to survive the coming collapse of the global order better than anyone else, okay? And so by taking over Ukraine, you now control 1/3 of the world's carbohydrates and a lot of the world's energy, right? Once you control Ukraine and the Black Sea, you're now able to export your energy and your food to Africa, to the Middle East, to Europe, to Asia, okay? So that's the grand vision for Russia. And again, in my opinion, this makes a lot of sense. The world is collapsing, and so you have to build a fortress. You have to be self-sufficient in order to weather the storm. So given this, America is like, well, we can do the same thing, okay? And so the grand plan for America is something called the technate, okay? Sorry. This is something we'll discuss more later on, okay? But first I want to introduce this idea to you, the technate. And the technate is very simple. It's the idea that, you know what? Yes, the world is going into chaos. The world is collapsing. But North America is self-sufficient, right? So these past few months, Donald Trump has been picking a fight with Denmark over Greenland, right? He's been threatening Canada. He's been threatening Mexico. He's been threatening Colombia. He's taking over Venezuela. He's been threatening Cuba. He's been threatening Honduras, Nicaragua. Why is he doing this? Because they're all part of the grand vision for Greater North America. Okay, what Peter Hegseth calls Greater North America. The technate. Right? And this is a response to Moscow's third Rome. If Moscow is going to build this grand alliance,
it's important to dive in here a little bit, just a little bit, to talk about the nuance. He's saying technate. All right, this is a technocracy. Now, if you take a look at what has been happening with Amazon, what has been happening with AI, what has been happening with data collection and trying to have behavioral pattern recognition and predictive power, it's building what in the olden days was called cybernetics. It's building a cybernetic system that is going to be governed by technocrats. It's a technocracy. The Borg, if you want to apply it to Star Trek, all right? That's what's starting to develop here. So we're going into goalless, we're going into hell. Like I said earlier, the whole world is going into hell, and we're going to be governed by this technocratic kind of world or government or system of government. And later down the road, there's going to be a cry of the people to have freedom. And there will be a lot of turmoil that will take place, destruction, for people to truly be free from the technate. But this technate is a rhyme of a fib sequence that's going all the way back to ancient Egypt, where they had their own technate.
in order to weather the storm, and America has no choice but to also build this grand alliance as well in order to protect itself in this coming storm. Right? So what Donald Trump has recognized is that Putin is right. The world is collapsing. There's nothing we can do to save the world. So let's just accelerate it in a way that allows America to benefit from this collapse. Okay? So by collapsing the GCC, by collapsing the Middle East.
I'll rewind this a little bit. Another aspect of technate is socialism, top-down government. That's another key component here. A technate is not a constitutional republic. All right, so let me just rewind a little bit of this so we get the full context of what he's saying.
And this is a response to Moscow's third Rome. If Moscow is going to build this grand alliance in order to weather the storm, then America has no choice but to also build this grand alliance as well in order to protect itself in this coming storm. All right? So what Donald Trump has recognized is that Putin is right. The world is collapsing. There's nothing we can do to save the world. So let's just accelerate it in a way that allows America to benefit from this collapse. Okay? So by collapsing the GCC, by collapsing the Middle East, you make Asia and Europe now dependent on North American energy and fertilizer exports. And this allows you the resources, the motivation to create the technate, okay? This self-sufficient economy, okay? Does it make sense? All right, okay.
All right, so he's basically saying that Greenland, Canada, the United States, Mexico, all of the Central America countries, Venezuela and Colombia, are going to be part of this.
All right.
And so, Cuba.
Let us summarize. Okay. So in September 11th, 1991, George H.W. Bush, he responds to the fall of the Berlin Wall, the collapse of Soviet Union, by coining a new phrase called the New World Order.
Okay. Hold on. Keep on going.
And there are three major pillars to the idea of the New World Order, okay? The first idea is that America will become the financial capital of the world. America will offshore resources and manufacturing to other places. And then America will focus primarily on finance, making Wall Street the center of the world, okay? The other idea is the idea of secular multiculturalism. So the world is divided, but what can unite everyone is the love of money, the love of consumerism. So if we just focus on making money and buying things, then the world will be forever at peace. Okay? And so we have to let go of borders. We have to let go of community. We have to let go of identity and focus more on consumerism. Okay? And the last idea is global domination, where in order for global trade to happen, America will provide security for all. No one has to fight anymore because America will guarantee global peace. If anyone rises to challenge this order, Pax Americana, then America will go destroy it. Okay? So these are the three main pillars of the New World Order as announced by George H.W. Bush on September 11th, 1991. Okay? Trump World Order is a response to this New World Order. Basically, what Trump is saying, and what he's been saying for a long time is, why should America pay for the defense of other nations? Why should America have to be the consumer of last resort for everyone? Why are Americans paying for everything so that
now,
Europeans
it's really important to get this, write this down. Take a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and write this down. COVID is tied to 9/11. 9/11 is not just what happened in New York in 2001. 9/11, 1991, was George Bush's telegraphing to the world that there's a new world order. I'm telling you that 9/11 is a major point in this fib sequence of humanity, of the human existence, human experience, history. And that's why 9/11, 2026 is just as dangerous as 9/11, 1991. and 9/11, 2001. It's all connected. And I would not be surprised that some interpretations of when the quote world started, if you are a creationist, I'm not a creationist, I'm an evolutionist, right? But if ones that are into the whole creation theory, which I'm not, but the thing is that there are Kabbalistic scholars that would say the world started on September 11th. So that would mean that the first fib sequence of human history starts on 9/11. Whatever year that goes back, you know, we're in 5,780 something, 86, 87, whatever it is. But you go back, that's supposedly the beginning based on the creationists. It wasn't January. Why? Because it had to be on Rosh Hashanah. That's the beginning of the new year, based on a lunar calendar, based on the Jewish tradition. And if we're going to base all of this that we're saying on Old Testament, then that means that Rosh Hashanah, the first Rosh Hashanah, is really important because that's the first point on the fib sequence of humanity. It's 9/11. 9/11. 9/11, the first Rosh Hashanah ever. And so every time there's a 9/11, if there's enough things that align just right, it's a bad thing that happens. I just told you something really deep. Really, really super deep here.
Their welfare and their pension. Everyone's taking advantage of America and it's destroying America. So let us change the new world order to the Trump world order, okay? And how do you do that? When you move America from a focus on finance to a focus on resources and manufacturing, okay? Basically, you believe the world is going to permanent war, and so you provide the resources and manufacturing in order to facilitate this world war. Meanwhile, America has become Fortress America. It can hide behind its fortress, kind of no fortress, and it's protected by two oceans, right? Okay? So this makes sense. Multiculturalism doesn't work. It leads to stupidity such as DEI, woke politics, transgenderism. It's all retarded. Let's focus on what makes us proud.
So this comparison for the new world order based on George Bush Sr., all right, finance, ship our manufacturing out so they buy our bonds. Multiculturalism. Well, we're seeing that it's an erosion of our society because it's eroding the pillars, God, country, and family. And this secular multiculturalism, it's right out of the page out of postmodernism philosophy, where anything goes. It's all relativistic. No. Society is crumbling under this type of philosophy. And then global domination, Pax Americana. Well, we have mismanaged our gains after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We became hubris, right? With Trump's New World Order, we need to bring back the manufacturing. That means destroying the paper belt and rebooting the Rust Belt. And then this idea of what he calls it Christian nationalism, but it's the rebooting of religion. Because like I've been saying on many of these broadcasts, it's God, country, and family. God, country, and family. It's antithetical to postmodernism. And then this idea of rebooting the country through this kind of almost like an America First policy. It's the MAGA movement that he's talking about. Versus, so I've used the terms the end of globalization, the beginnings of localization.
Americans, which is Christian nationalism, okay? Our love of the white race, our nation, and God, okay? So no more of this multiculturalism, no more immigration, no more open borders, no more Democratic Party. Let's just focus on being Christian nationalists, okay? Love the United States, love of Christianity, love of the white race. And the last idea is, why should America pay to protect the world? Screw Pax Americana, let's just do MAGA, okay? What's MAGA? MAGA is national rejuvenation. Let's make America great again by rebuilding America's manufacturing industry, by exploiting the infinite resources that God has given America in order to make sure every American has a decent life, okay? All right? So again, I understand Trump is an idiot. Trump has launched America into this stupid war in the Middle East. Trump has pissed off NATO. Trump has pissed off all of America's allies. So he's a retard. But if the goal was to destroy the American empire, destroy the global economy, and rebuild America for the benefit of Americans, then Trump is a genius. And he may go down in history as America's greatest president. Okay? All right.
And this is the reason why this 250-year anniversary of the birth of the nation is so important. We are literally in a new type of revolution. But it coincides with a world war. And a lot of people would say there was a world war happening during our first revolution because England and France were fighting each other. So there is a similarity. There's a rhyme with the history here. But the point to really take home is there's a rebuilding of the United States here. We will win in the long run, but it's going to take years, and there's going to be a lot of pain, and there's going to be a curse on the whole world, and everyone's going to be affected, no matter how wealthy, how healthy, how much you prepare. You think you can save up enough food and all that. Somehow, some way, God will find your Achilles heel and curse you. You can't prep for this. All right. What was the story in the Old Testament about the Jews going out with the manna, and they saw manna for the first time, and they were worried that they wouldn't have enough food, and so they collected too much. And then there were worms that ended up spoiling the extra food that they had because they didn't believe God was going to provide. That's a prepper. The preppers are going to be hit, probably worse off than the ones that don't prep. Now that is totally counter to the mainstream logic. But preppers will be cursed more because that's your Achilles heel. You think that you know better, and therefore you can prepare for the curse that comes. Don't prep for it. If you want to reduce the magnitude on your life, just try to look at the things that you've done wrong. Become a better person, and it will ease the curse. It's not going to take away the curse. It will ease the pain of the curse. But if you think that you can prep your way into this, it's going to be even worse for you. And if you don't believe me, there's many sub-stories within the Old Testament that prove my point. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. I do all these videos for free to give you a very unique context of what is happening in the world. And my accuracy is very good. So please pay attention and take the supplements that I offer. These are things that I do to slow down the aging process. Because don't you want to see a world that's better? Well, you're not going to get to the other side by being unhealthy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the resveratrol. This will help with youthful gene expression, get rid of cells that are in senescence, help with the health of your mitochondria, boost up your energy levels, and help with your skin health. Super important to slow down the aging process. This stacks really well with C60, but also many other supplements such as digestive enzyme complex. Digestive enzyme complex will help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids to reduce the load on your pancreas. This is super important. A lot of people are starting to have problems with their pancreas. Have you noticed? Do you want to be a Steve Jobs? Well, just keep on living your life the way you are. But if you want to improve your pancreatic health, it's really important to be taking digestive enzyme complex. So please go to my store, get the digestive enzyme complex. It helps to break up proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. An olive leaf extract boosts up your immune system and helps with your cardiovascular system, and it reduces plaque formation. It soaks up free radicals. It brings down inflammation. Super important. You stack these together, and it's a powerful stack to slow down the aging process. You're getting youthful gene expression. You're helping the health of your pancreas. You're boosting up your immune system and helping your cardiovascular system. And when you have a better cardiovascular system and you're keeping down inflammation, guess what? You have better brain function. My father died from ischemic dementia, which basically means slow, poor blood flow to the hippocampus, and he slowly died from it. Do you want to be like that? Do you want to have a Swiss cheese brain? Because it's really bad. And a lot of people are going to have it because of what we went through in 2020. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take my advice. If not, don't be surprised something bad happens to you.
Any questions? Yeah.
My first question is, you mentioned that the Donald Trump or Putin, they think that the world, the whole system will collapse, inevitable. But why? If this Ukraine war doesn't happen, or if this Iran war won't happen, how will the world economy collapse?
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, so well, Putin and Trump know that the world will collapse, and the question is, how do they know this? And the answer is because it's so obvious. Okay, so for the longest time, America started. What America did was, it basically, after World War II, it lent money to Europe and Japan so that Europe and Japan can buy manufactured goods from America. Okay? And this is good for America because it created a lot of jobs and Americans were productive. But then over time, Americans became very lazy. And so they made the Europeans and the Japanese do the work, specifically Germany. And then America started to be the consumer, okay? So then America started to spend more money than it made. Okay? Before, it made more money than it spent and lent this money to Europe and Japan. But then over time, this reversed itself. Okay? And then what happened was that America started to shift its manufacturing to China. And so China is like, let me do all the work for you, America, and I'll do it for really cheaply, and I'll borrow money from you. I'll lend you the money to do it, okay? So what's happening is that America is becoming lazy, in debt, and corrupt. Okay? Because the entire world was basically working for America for very little money. So Americans didn't really have to work. And this led to massive inequality in America, which led to political corruption, which led to an oligarchy, okay? So don't think of America as a democracy, think of it as an oligarchy. And so when that happens, when only a few people benefit from the system, then the American people get really pissed, and so they elected Donald Trump. Okay, and why did Donald Trump get elected? Because he understood intuitively this system does not work. It cannot hold. It cannot be stable for too long. It's going to collapse eventually. Okay. The question then is, when will it collapse, and who will benefit from the collapse? And Donald Trump's like, okay, then let's control the collapse so that my friends and I can benefit the most from this collapse, okay? And Donald Trump has two sets of friends. The first are the Christians, okay? Christian evangelicals, basically the fanatics who support Israel, as well as the AI, Silicon Valley. All right? So we learned about the idea of elite overproduction, okay? But the idea is that as society collapses, declines, the elites start to compete against themselves for resources. And so right now, the elite are the finance people, and the new elites, okay, the counter elites, are the AI people, okay? Artificial intelligence. And something we'll discuss later on. Okay, but I introduce you to the idea. But basically, the idea is that America is a house of cards. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's corrupt. It's unequal. It's lazy. It's in decline. So it's going to fall apart sooner or later. Okay. But the question then is like, how do you?
So he's basically saying something that I've been saying for a long time here. 80% of the population of the United States is too lazy, too stupid. And it's only 20% of the population that actually is productive in moving forward, the society. And the reason why Americans are lazy and stupid is because they're too comfortable. And there's going to be a feedback loop through this curse that gives Americans pain. People are too fat in the United States, have too much comfort. Well, there's going to be something bad that comes and takes away that comfort. It takes away those fat cells. And then eventually they start realizing that they have to work, and they have to work hard. And that the free time and you know the amenities of life will be diminished. Americans have become too lazy. And on top of the laziness and the lack of God, country, and family, it creates a society that's not as productive as it could be. Now, once we go through this purging, once there is this purification that takes place through this curse in the United States, we will become much more productive and get back to our American ethos. But right now, you look on the news any day in the United States, do you really think that Americans deserve a blessing? The answer is no. They don't deserve a blessing. They need to be cursed. They need to be punished. But in the end, America will come out better. Just like how the soul, when you die, everyone dies, right? You can't live forever. But everyone dies eventually. And they go through some sort of purification. Everybody. You can't get away from it. You can't absolve it and say that someone died for your sins, which is total bullshit. You are responsible for your actions, not someone else. And so when your soul starts to get purified for whatever bad things that you did based on a religious rubric, then the soul can elevate. Because the soul can't elevate unless it's purified. Same thing is happening in this plane, in the plane of the living. In this plane, we have to go through a purification process because of the sins that we've created. Americans deserve a curse.
Decline. How do you control this decline in a way that allows you and your friends to benefit the most? Okay? And that's why Donald Trump started this war in the Middle East. Because by starting this war in the Middle East, you're extending the process of decline in America, and therefore you're able to help transform America from one from an economy that's based on finance to one that's based on resource exploitation and then manufacturing. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Any more questions?
So I have one last questions about the explanations of this war. Like before, we explained it in the religious perspectives, and how does this explanation connect to the explanation today?
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay. So the thing that is about war is that there are different factors at play. Okay. So before we went into the eschatological factor. All right. Now I'll explain to you the geopolitical or the economic. Okay. But there's also the historical or hubris. Right? And what you need to recognize about history is that often all three things converge together. Okay? Because what is religion? Religion is a memory, a long lost memory of our ancient past, told through myths and stories. So there's truth to it.
And this is why I keep on saying that this history rhymes from the fib sequence. And these stories and the religious convictions of societies, are shaping world events. Now, I think that the world probably was created, right? From the countdown of the Old Testament on 9/11, 5,700 and whatever number a year, 86, I think it's 87, whatever it is. All right, and it was done on the Shabbos. There was no shofar to be blown because there was no humans yet. But there was an opening for good and evil to manifest. And it was mankind to pick the path to bring in good and evil, or through the tree of life or the tree of knowledge, right? The tree of life would be no good and evil. The tree of knowledge provided the good and evil. So when the creation story, again, I'm a evolutionist, not a creationist, but based on creationism, that started on 9/11, 5,700 and so many years ago. All right. Now, obviously, the world is older, so what that 5,700 number is an enigma, a mystery. It's not literal. All right. Even if you're a creation, it's not literal. So, but it's starting on 9/11. Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the new year in a lunar calendar. So the mapping of a solar and a lunar seems to start on September 11th. Okay? Now, so you go through the creation story, and it's telling you, what was the last thing that was created? It was man. Well, and then God rested. All right, so if it starts on Friday night, the shofar's not blown. It's 9/11. It's Rosh Hashanah. Evil, there is an element of evil that can be part of an existence. And there was the great test, and Adam and Eve failed. So now it is day 6. And Adam and Eve is waiting. All they had to do was wait a few hours, and they would be going into the Sabbath. But what did they do? They didn't pick the tree of life by waiting and going into the 7th day, right? you know, a shot the Sabbath day. What did they do? They ate from the tree. So there's this mankind has a tendency to pick the wrong path and make things worse. And it just keeps on getting worse and worse and worse and worse with this fib sequence. So it is true that there's hints of these stories and that it represents this fib sequence, starting from the origin of man.
Because it's basing a lot of its ideas through personal experience, through history, okay? From thousands of years ago, right? And geopolitics, economics drives historical forces. So another way of understanding this is that often all these different factors are aligned together. This is something we'll discuss more later on, okay? Right? And so why do I look at different factors, different vectors? And the answer is because I make predictions. And if I'm able to analyze an event using eschatology, geopolitics, and history, and they are aligned together, then I can make a pretty accurate prediction that this will happen. I don't know when it will happen. I may not know who the players are, but I'm pretty sure this event will happen. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, great. All right, so we'll continue this next week, okay?
Okay. So that is
introducing Canva email. Now, it's so much simpler to promote your business. Just drag.
All right, that is a very important video to couple with the idea that I have been saying for years now that there's going to be a curse on 9/11/2026. And it's that curse starts and it's going to build up and the world is going to have tumultuous things happen. And we are already in World War III. Not Gulf War III, not regional, we're in World War III already. And all wars are different because of technology. And the way we perceive the war is different. This is the first time that news is immediate. Worldwide. So our perception of the war will be different too, on top of it. But there seems to be this sequence that keeps on popping back up. And that is Rosh Hashanah and not being able to blow the shofar because it coincides with the Sabbath. 9/11 is another repeated sequence that is happening. And a lot of bad things happen in the United States when Esau has the most strength based on the calendar. 6 months out of the year, Jacob has strength, and then it wanes, and then Esau starts to strengthen. So what happens is that it's always inversely related. Jacob is strong, Esau is weak. Esau is strong, Jacob is weak. Until Esau dies. Now, in the months of August, September, October, November, January, February, parts of February, right? So August, September, October, November, December, January. No, it's January. That's the strength of Esau. Now, when bad things happen in the United States, when are they? September, October. The apex of the strength of Esau is October. Bad things happen in October, but also bad things happen in September as Esau's strengthening. So there is historical precedence that coincides to this cycle of the soul roots that has been written down for thousands of years. This is not, I'm not making this up. This is in literature that's been written down for a long time. It's just very few people know this. And we are moving towards dangerous times because we chose to pick a path that was wrong, just like Adam and Eve picked the path that was wrong. We chose expediency, or we chose, some sort of, we didn't want to wait, or we wanted to be comfortable, or we wanted to not solve the problem. We wanted to kick the can down the road. Whatever the reason, all of us are at fault. And none of us are going to be able to hide from it, no matter how much rice and beans that you prep for. It's going to happen. All right. With that, there was a military plane that was hit over Iran. It was an F-15E fighter jet in Iranian space. So we're going to play what's going on with the news, breaking news on this. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the channel by getting the great products that I offer. All these videos I do are for free. Omega-3, this will bring down inflammation and help with your lipid profile so you reduce plaque formation. Your cardiovascular health will improve. Take omega-3 every day. Vitamin B complex, if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female, this will boost up your energy levels, rev up your cellular metabolism. You'll have more ATP and it will protect your neurons. Super important. And also, if you have joint pain, you have arthritis, or you have a sports injury, get the collagen. Collagen can be stacked with the collagen that I sell, and the collagen can be stacked with the super strong relief. But what collagen does is it will block receptors that cause the inflammation and the pain. It'll block EP4. It also helps to reduce joint erosion by blocking MMP3 and MMP13. This will also help to remodel the cartilage and the cushioning of the joint. So please go to my store and get the collagen and take it and rebuild that joint. And you want to start remodeling those joints that you have earlier the better, because you don't want complete cartilage erosion. Because if you get complete cartilage erosion, or too much of your cartilage is eroded, you're going to need surgery. So you don't want that, trust me. So go to my store and get the collagen. And also, another great way to improve your health and slow down the aging process is to get the heirloom barley. This is a month supply. This will detoxify your body daily, reduce inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. And by detoxifying your body, bringing down inflammation, and soaking up free radicals, you're helping the cardiovascular system, your brain function, your immune system, your endocrine system. You're even going to recover quicker after a workout and help with joint health because you're bringing down the inflammation. So this would stack well with the collagen. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Make sure you use discount 5, you save some money. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Help support the channel by getting the great products that will slow down the aging process. These are products that I take every day. It works, it's obvious. I'm older than Alex Jones. Alex Jones looks like he's 90, all right? So it behooves you to listen to Dr. Paul Cottrell, all right? Because I'm not wrong. Okay, let's listen to Al Jazeera about the plane crash.
This is happening at a time of war, of course. The US has claimed air superiority over Iran in this conflict very early, in the early days of the conflict. In fact, we're now entering the second month of the war. What does air superiority look like militarily if Iran is able, if it's confirmed, of shooting down such a jet over its territory? Does the US really have air superiority?
So yes, and this is terms like air superiority are often misunderstood. It's a military term, and what it essentially means is the way the U.S. generally fights wars is in the opening stages. The first part of the air campaign is what we call a SEAD campaign, SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses. And so the initial sorties, the initial strike packages would have been focused on eliminating Iran's, especially the long-range air defense threat, the radars, the missile launchers, the command and control vehicles. And so you can have air superiority, but that doesn't mean, essentially that means the enemy can't fly, that you own the airspace. Your aircraft can fly, the enemy can't fly. And that's what we're seeing in Iran. It does not mean that your aircraft face zero threat at all from ground-based air defenses. That's very rare, especially against a fairly sophisticated integrated air defense network like Iran has. So U.S. aircraft can't.
We're going to go to live. We're going to go to live now about this plane getting hit.
And there's some of the other big headlines that we are covering, and of course the latest on Operation Epic Fury, as Iranian state TV is now claiming today that a U.S. pilot was ejected from an aircraft over southwestern Iran. The broadcaster went on to say, quote, "If you capture the enemy pilot or pilots alive and hand them over to the police, you will receive a precious prize," end quote. Now, there's been no word from the White House, the Pentagon, or U.S. Central Command as to the validity of that claim, but you can see this right here coming in from the New York Post, as they say Iran claims it shot down U.S. fighter jet as bounty placed on pilot. Again, these are claims coming in from Iran at this point. The U.S. has not officially confirmed any of this. Now, all of this comes as President Trump is saying Iran's bridges and electric power plants could be targeted next. The president writing that over on Truth Social very early this morning. Now, we're also getting some video that came in from the president on Truth Social. He posted this just yesterday, and I want to pop it up on your screen as it says the biggest bridge in Iran comes tumbling down, never to be used again. Much more to follow. It's time for Iran to make a deal before it's too late, and there is nothing left of what still could become a great country. Again, this is just some of that video posted by President Trump on Truth Social, showing the flames and, of course, the smoke there after that huge bridge was brought down by the U.S. Right now, there is a lot to discuss about all of this, so I do want to bring in a guest to talk about all of the different developments out of the Middle East. We have Vice Admiral Fawzi Miller, former commander of the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here.
Thanks for having me.
And I do want to talk to you a little bit about what we're learning coming in out of Iran. Again, I've said it a few times, but it is a claim at this point. What do you make of that? And if that all is true, what does that say to you that they are offering a reward for the person's capture?
We still don't know if this report is accurate or not. But anytime we fly manned aircraft over hostile territory, there's an understanding that something could go wrong. It could be a mechanical failure. The Iranians could have shot the airplane down, and we have some air crew on the ground that require rescuing. So we do everything we can to mitigate any kind of circumstances that would cause our airplanes to get shot down or to be lost over hostile territory. But it does occasionally happen. So we have procedures for that as well. One of the reasons the campaign plan that we see being executed was written and executed the way it is to avoid getting manned aircraft over hostile territory while there's still a robust air defense. But that doesn't mean, even though we've knocked down a lot of the air defenses, it doesn't mean we've gotten every missile, we've gotten every piece of anti-aircraft artillery that they have. But we have procedures, and there's a Joint Rescue Operations Center that stood up. That's sole purpose is to rescue downed airmen, particularly in hostile territory. A lot of people have been asking what sort of things does the 31st MU bring to the fight on the Tripoli that just arrived in theater. The Marines have a mission to do the tactical recovery of aircraft and personnel. They're very good at it, as do the other services. So our crews are trained to be able to evade capture and be rescued. So all of that, if there are airmen on the ground right now, all of that is in work, and we're certainly trying to rescue them. It can't be a surprise to anyone that Iran offers a bounty on downed air crew. That's not new. That was very prevalent in the days of the Vietnam War, where if someone got shot down over North Vietnam, the government would pay money to the citizens that turned that person in. But there's also underground operations. There's not any love in Iran for the regime, so it's quite possible these aircrew could find themselves in the hands of friendly Iranians that would help spirit them out of the country.
That's always a possibility. And I do want to show you some of this video again that was coming in from President Trump as he posted it on Truth Social, saying, of course, this morning that up next could be the bridges, the electric power plants that are targeted. As you look at this video here and essentially hear about the bridges that have been hit or could potentially be hit, what do you make of that overall and the goal? What is the message there that President Trump is trying to send to the Iranian regime?
I think the bombing of this particular bridge sends a couple of messages and does a couple of things. First message it says is that it's going to be more difficult for the regime to move around inside the country, either to fight the Americans and the Israelis, or to command and control the troops, and or to oppress their people, which is obviously one of the things that they do on a regular basis. So not having this particular bridge, which is a fairly important bridge in terms of land travel in Iran, is a blow to the regime's ability to both fight the war and to oppress its people. The other thing it does is it gives a message of some hope, I think, to the Iranian people. So a lot of the targets that we've taken out, and there's over 12,000 by the U.S. and almost as many by the Israelis, but they're military targets or industrial targets that are away from the populated areas. So the Iranian people know a war is going on, but they don't necessarily see it up close and personal. They don't see it affecting them, and they don't therefore see it affecting the regime. Well, this is a very visible signal that the regime is under attack and unable to defend very critical infrastructure.
Important to note that just a few months ago, we saw things kind of escalate as we started to see more and more of those protests that were taking place, not just in Tehran, but in smaller areas of Iran as well, against the current regime. Is it possible that we are going to see that happen again, or are the people there of Iran still a little nervous due to the executions, the public hangings that have taken place?
Well, although it's very difficult to get information out of Iran these days because the regime has the internet shut down, some information does, of course, get out. And what we're seeing is that people are against the regime, but they're not able to protest against the regime. One of the things I think we ought to think about is when we think about a revolution in Iran, we think of the 1979 revolution. We think about it really taking root, taking hold in Tehran and expanding outwards. If you go back in history to around the turn of the last century, so 1907 or so, the constitutional revolution in Iran, that came from the outside, from smaller cities and provinces. And Iran is only about 60% Persian. So there's quite a bit of ethnic dispersion around the country. And further away from Tehran you get, the more ethnic disparity that you actually have. And so it may be that because the IRGC, the Basij forces are concentrated in Tehran, it may be that we see this revolution come not from Tehran out, but from outside working its way in.
What signs are you looking for that maybe the actual conflict that's going on, the war itself, could be wrapping up? President Trump spoke to the nation, addressing them, all of us, in prime time earlier on this week, saying essentially that we may need 2 to 3 weeks. What signs specifically are you looking for that things are maybe coming to a close?
I think there's a couple things that we're looking for. We've had great success in the military campaign, but the work's not yet done, and it's important that work gets done before the campaign concludes. One of the things that we continue to see is that Iran has the ability to send missiles all the way over to Israel, and they continue to do so on a daily basis, missiles and drones. And so we're going to need to continue to attract those capabilities, in particular the launchers. And they're down to somewhere in the neighborhood, I think, of about 100 launchers left to them. And so they've taken significant losses, but they still have that capability. And so we're going to want to continue to attract that. And the other thing, of course, that's of major importance is the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. And part of that is the ability of the Iranians to keep the strait closed. Part of it is the will of the Iranian regime to keep it closed. So can they command and control the forces? Can they actually attack ships that are sailing through the strait that don't have the prior approval of the regime? I think once we see those two things come into play, we'll see a conclusion of the hostilities.
All right, I want to pivot over to CNN on their take of the downing of the plane, because I suspect they're going to demonize Trump and that, you know, where the war is getting out of control and all this stuff. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This will help to improve your cardiovascular health, slow down the aging process, help with your brain function, help with your musculature, boost up your immune system and your endocrine system, rev up your metabolism. You'll have more energy. This is really important to take to slow down the aging process. This is a month's supply. It has 68 nutrients. It's a very comprehensive compound profile. Take it every day, and you can stack it with a lot of the supplements that I offer to get that synergistic benefit, like C60. Now, C60, you can get an MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil. C60 has to be suspended in oil for proper absorption. C60 is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. It's a very powerful antioxidant. Take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach, to slow down the aging process. It's going to soak up free radicals, help with the health of your mitochondria. Your energy levels will go up, less stress in your tissues and your cells. It'll help to bring down inflammation. It also helps to reduce plaque formation because it's reducing the concentration of oxidized LDL in your bloodstream. Higher oxidized LDL, more plaque. Less oxidized LDL, less plaque. It's really simple. Now, C60 also helps with brain function. It helps to improve the mitochondria and the neurons, helps to produce those neurotransmitters you need, and you'll have positive neuroplasticity, so you think faster, you have better memory. This will help to boost up your immune system and your endocrine system by bringing down that inflammation, soaking up those free radicals, and reducing cellular stress. So this is very powerful. Take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been taking a teaspoon every day since 2016. It's a cornerstone of my protocol, and you can stack it with the Boomer Boost, but you can also stack it with the resveratrol to help with your skin. This stacks well with turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and also Max 35. What you'll notice when you stack it with the Max 35 is you actually be able to breathe better. Why? Because it's reducing inflammation at the bronchial level. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60. And lastly, Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse. Take a teaspoon a day every day. Why? It helps to boost up your innate immune system. It neutralizes, helps to improve your oral cavity and your oropharynx, maintains a mucosal barrier, and helps the health of your epithelial cells. I've been taking a teaspoon a day every day for 6 years. All right? This will help to boost up your immune system. Super important, and it neutralizes. If you're not feeling well during the cold season, or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day until it's all clear, and then go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon a day. But it's really important, and you'll notice that your oral cavity, your oral health will improve. When you have better oral health, guess what? Your cardiovascular system improves too. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse. Take a teaspoon a day every day. Boost up that immune system. And it's part of an anti-aging protocol. Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse, the multivitamin and the probiotic C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and the boomer boost. Very strong protocol to slow down the aging process. You're gonna have more energy. You're gonna be soaking up those free radicals. You're gonna bring down inflammation, and you'll have more vitality. And all these different organ systems are going to improve. Your immune system, your cardiovascular system, your endocrine system, brain function, musculature, energy levels, cellular metabolism. These are all beneficial. And if you couple that with proper diet and exercise balancing, stretching exercises, filtering your water, staying away from processed foods, mindfulness, learning new things, some spirituality, get your body into parasympathetic mode. These are all very important to slow down the aging process. If you don't do what I'm telling you to do, as you age, you will be dependent on pharmacopoeia. And if you're dependent on pharmacopoeia, it's going to cost you more and you're going to have side effects. It's better to pay attention now and to follow my protocol. It works. You do it regularly, and you're going to slow down the aging process. It's very simple. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen into CNN here.
A major development in the war with Iran. Just minutes ago, U.S. sources confirmed to CNN that an American fighter jet has been shot down over Iran, and a desperate and very dangerous search and rescue mission for the crew is now underway.
3 U.S. sources are confirming earlier Iranian state media reports. Those reports included these images you're seeing right here on the screen of what it claimed were a downed U.S. Force fighter jet. CNN has reached out to U.S. Central Command for a comment. I want to bring in CNN's Jim Shudo, who is in Tel Aviv, Israel, and Elena Treen at the White House. Jim, to pick it off with you, what more are you learning?
U.S. officials now confirming that a U.S. fighter jet was shot down over Iranian territory and that a search and rescue operation has been lost and, to our knowledge, remains underway. In fact, there have been images circulating online, geolocated by CNN, which are consistent with a search and rescue operation. They show both fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, including one video that shows the refueling of 2 helicopters, and that's notable because they'd be refueled to stay in the air, which would indicate that they've been in the air for some time conducting these search and rescue operations. A serious, arguably one of the most serious circumstances in wartime is to have U.S. forces behind enemy lines, shot down behind enemy lines, and to then launch a search and rescue operation, which, though they are trained for, these crews are positioned for these operations and trained for these operations. Those operations themselves are dangerous as well because they put additional U.S. forces over Iranian territory in wartime, and where it's already been demonstrated that Iran maintains the capability to threaten the U.S. aircraft, having shot down one. So those forces will be operating with great care, but also with immediacy to get those pilots safely and in time. We should note that Iranian state TV, as it earlier reported the shoot down, was exhorting viewers to turn in pilots if they were to find them before U.S. forces do. So one might say was something of a race going on, right, between Iranian authorities and forces and U.S. forces to get those pilots to safety.
All right, Jim Shudo, thank you. We hope that they are safe and that they are rescued. We appreciate it. Let's go now to Elena Treen at the White House. Elena, what are you hearing there?
Okay, Wall Street Journal just posted one of the crew members of the F-15E shot down over Iran, rescued.
Yeah, look, so this is reporting from, 3 U.S. officials, so my colleague Haley Britsky, Kevin Liptak, and I, as Jim laid out, that a U.S. fighter jet has been shot down over Iran and search and rescue is underway. I will note that at this point, there's very little information we actually know about what is happening related to this. We do not know where the plane went down. We do not know the status of the crew on board, and we are not hearing any official word from the U.S. military or the White House at this moment, though, of course, we do know that they are monitoring this very closely, and obviously this is a very sensitive thing. And so they're being very careful with what they're going to be putting out publicly. Now, I will say one thing we have been hearing, of course, is repeatedly I'm hearing in my conversations with people in that building behind me. I'm hearing in my conversations with people in that building behind me, you have to be careful with what you're hearing from the Iranian state media, which of course has been sharing a lot of videos and images this morning of this. But what we did hear as well from the state-run Tasman agency, they said that the search for any missing crew had, quote, so far been unsuccessful.
All right. This is CBS News.
We begin with some breaking news in the war with Iran. An American fighter jet has been shot down in Iranian airspace. Two sources now tell CBS News that U.S. forces rescued one of the two crew members in that jet, but search and rescue efforts are ongoing for the second member. And the message from a governor of southwestern Iran province, the Sour, says this: whoever captures or kills the crew of the downed U.S. jet will be specially commended. We've got team coverage on all of this. Standing by for us, CBS News national security analyst Aaron McLean, and we have CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson. But first, let's bring in Aaron McLean. He's a U.S. Marine veteran and a former foreign policy advisor on Capitol Hill. Aaron, thanks again for joining us. Can you help us understand the hardware that we're talking about here? What type of fighter jet is this, and just how many pilots would have been flying it?
Right. Well, so this appears to have been an F-15E. This is an American fighter jet that also is a bomber over Iran in recent weeks. We can assume it's being used for so-called air-to-ground missions, so prosecuting targets on the ground. You heard the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, speak in his most recent briefing about how the Air Force and the U.S. military are shifting to so-called dynamic targeting. To put that in layman's terms, what it means is that the aircraft are kind of hanging out in the skies over Iran, waiting for targeting information to come in, and then they go after whatever the target may be, whether that's a missile launcher or what have you. Obviously, the longer you loiter, the longer you stick around, the more missions like this that you run, even if you're in a condition of air superiority, people are going to shoot at you, and eventually something like this could happen.
Yeah, and what do we know about the area where this plane came down?
This is western Iran. This is a mountainous area, sort of a tribal region. It's not all Persian. There are Arab tribes in the area. So it's we can presume, I think, a pretty complex situation on the ground. Look, assuming that these pilots, or these crew members are both able to get to the ground safely and alive and able to move, their training is to escape and evade. Their job is to stay away from the bad guys long enough that the rescuers can get to them, and the human terrain down there. Are you dealing with people who are friendly to the regime, or are you dealing with people hostile to the regime? That's obviously a factor, but kind of hard to know in advance because you don't know exactly who it is you're going to meet down there.
Yeah, that is a good point. And let's stick with that because we're now being told that one crew member has been rescued. So what do you think will go into the rescue mission for this other crew member?
Right. Well, it's obviously wonderful news if we have one rescued. Something to think about, even though you're sort of ejecting at more or less the same point in space and time from this aircraft. This aircraft, it's a jet, right? It's going pretty fast. So these two people can come down I'm going to assume here, I want to assume that the second crew member is also alive and got out of the aircraft alive. They might actually be pretty far apart on the ground when they land. They might be in different circumstances. I mean, a few hundred meters even on the ground is a pretty big difference in tactical terms. So it's not totally surprising to hear that we have one and are still waiting for news on the second one. These special operations forces that are doing this rescue are going to keep pushing until they figure out exactly what happened with the second one.
Yeah, and as you're talking, we're looking at video there earlier. It looks like that is of the fighter jet that came down. I want to ask you about the Iranian regime itself. Do you think this is sort of a victory for them?
Well, we've been talking about how we have air superiority over Iran. Having air superiority does not mean that you are invulnerable. This kind of thing can happen. There can be a lucky shot. We could have missed an air defense system. They might have held an air defense system in reserve to use later in the campaign. So in purely military terms, frankly, you would anticipate something like this happening eventually. That's why, obviously, with the special operations forces you see doing the rescue, we were staged and prepared for it to happen. The impact is really political. Is the other crew member who we don't have accounted for yet, are they alive and captured by the Iranians? That's going to have an enormous impact for them. That's going to be a source of leverage for them in negotiations. obviously a propaganda victory. We'll just have to see what happens there.
Yeah, Aaron McLean, appreciate your insight today. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Now let's go live to Washington and CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson. Eleanor, let's stick with what we were talking about earlier. I asked Aaron if this was somehow a propaganda victory for the Iranian regime, but I want to ask you just how significant all of this is.
This is significant, Mugo, because it would be the first fighter jet down over Iran since the conflict began. Iran has been shooting at fighter jets since the beginning. Last week, I believe it was last week, we reported on an F-35 that was hit by Iran, but then safely landed. The U.S. has lost other F-15s, but those were in friendly fire incidents in Kuwait, and all of the crew members safely ejected. This is the first fighter jet downed over Iran. I want to kind of go over how this has played out this morning, because initially Iran state media claimed to have downed a jet, and then we started seeing images appear of helicopters and a refueling plane flying low to the ground in daylight, appearing to show a search and rescue effort underway. The U.S. officials confirmed to CBS there is a search and rescue. Now one member of the crew of the F-15 has been rescued by U.S. forces, we're told, while search and rescue is ongoing for the second member. An F-15E holds two crew members, which is important as this search and rescue goes on. So far, we haven't heard from the Pentagon or the White House about this jet.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what you mentioned earlier, because we have more questions, I guess, about the search and rescue operation that's happening right now. One person, right? One of those crew members has been found, and right now they're still looking for another one?
That's what we believe, because an F-15E carries two crew members.
Yeah.
We're told by U.S. officials that, you know, one member has been rescued by U.S. forces, but that hasn't ended the search and rescue, meaning there is still one underway for potentially a second crew member.
And when this first happened, I guess earlier today, this morning, there were questions as to whether or not this was an F-35 or an F-15, and now you're saying it's an F-15E. How did that confirmation come about?
That was kind of confirmed by open source images online. The Iranians initially claimed an F-35, but there are very smart people online who confirmed from the tail images that Iranian state media have posted that it's more likely an F-15. I will note Iran has claimed in the past, made several claims about shooting down American fighter jets, because as you were talking about with Aaron, it could be considered a propaganda win, showing that although the Pentagon and the White House talk about air superiority, they're still able to get these dangerous shots off. In the past, those claims have been unverified, have been fact-checked by U.S. Central Command, by the command of U.S. forces in the Middle East. But this time, so far, we're not hearing refutes of the reporting from the Pentagon or the White House. And the White House actually confirmed to our reporters there that the president has been briefed on the incident.
Okay, Eleanor Watson, thank you so much for your reporting.
All righty. Well, hopefully they find the other pilot alive.
That's the end of the broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please share the links. This episode, I went into detail about the curse that I've been talking about for a long time, and how events in the world are emerging that prove my point. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the products that I offer. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. Help support the channel. All these videos are for free. Please share the links. Ask your social media to follow me. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.